Did you say
How about
Bernadette?
now? Can people
Bernadette is on?
online hear okay? Oh, okay, great. Okay, cool.
Bernadette is signed in, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, Bernadette is on.
So
I
one,
can
two,
hear
three.
you.
Hi, Bernadette.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so we will,
So we have a quorum, I think it's 7 people.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so we will go ahead and get started. I'm gonna hit record. Okay. Okay, we are good to go. All right. Okay, welcome everyone. It's nice to see you all. Thank you for coming to the meeting this month. And we have some updates and presentations that I'm looking forward to. So I will go ahead and start with the land acknowledgement.
I need to call the meeting to order. Okay. So I'm gonna officially get our meeting started. Okay. So just for the record, Tuesday, this is an exceptional time to meet, May 28, 2024. This is the Yolo County Climate Action Commission. We are calling this meeting to order. And Julia, thank you for getting us started. Do you want to actually start with the roll call and then we'll do the land acknowledgement?
Yeah,
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll do a quick roll call. Commissioner Mavondo,
Here.
Commissioner Reed,
Here.
Commissioner Gattel,
Here.
Commissioner Allman,
Here.
Commissioner Kim is absent today. Commissioner Serena,
Here.
Commissioner White is also absent today. Commissioner Austin,
Present.
thank you. Commissioner Alvarez. Looks like, well, I will check back in on that to see if he's planning on attending, but I'll go ahead and keep going. Commissioner Bennett
Here.
and Commissioner Britton.
Here.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Do we have at-large commissioners also?
We do. Yeah. Okay. And then, sorry, ex officio member Morgan, who I think is, sorry, let me promote you to a panelist. Sorry about that, Sarah. There you are. I'll call out Sarah once more since now she's a panelist. Sarah Morgan.
Present.
Thank you. And then,
Present. Thank you.
yeah, thank you. And then lastly, ex officio member Fresquez.
Okay. And then also we acknowledging that Supervisor Provenza is here today. Good afternoon.
And sorry, I just want to get, have Carla have the chance to say that she's here as well. I just promoted her to a panelist. A second, can you go ahead and confirm your attendance? Thank you. If you don't mind unmuting Carla, that would be great. And then we'll keep going. Thank
Sorry
you.
about that. Didn't realize.
worries.
Present. Thank you.
Okay, great. And then we have Supervisor Provenza, I see is here today. And then Supervisor Lucas Burks is not in attendance today. So we will go ahead and keep going. Thank you, guys. I'll give it back to you, NJ.
Thank you, Julia. So let's look at agenda item number 1. Commissioner Bennett will read the land acknowledgement for us. Thank you, Micah.
We should take a moment to acknowledge the land on which we are gathered. For thousands of years, this land has been the home of Patwin people. Today, there are 3 federally recognized Patwin tribes: Quechel-Dihi Band of Wintun Indians of the Calusa Indian Community, Quetzal-Dihi Band of Wintun Indians, and Yochi-Dihi Wintun Nation. The Patwin people have remained committed to the stewardship of this land over many centuries. It has been cherished and protected as elders have instructed the young through generations. We are honored and grateful to be here today on their traditional lands.
Thank you, Commissioner Bennett. Let's move on to agenda item number 2, approval of the agenda. Do you approve the agenda the way you've received it, or do we need an amendment of any sort?
I move to approve it as it was presented.
Okay.
I second, Commissioner Reed.
Thank you. Discussions, questions? No? Let's put it to a vote. Do you mind calling the names? Thanks.
Okay. Chair Malondo,
Aye.
Commissioner Reed,
Aye.
Commissioner Daddle,
Aye.
Commissioner Allman,
Aye.
Commissioner Serena. Aye. Commissioner Austin,
Aye.
Commissioner Bennett,
Aye.
Commissioner Britton.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes. Thank you all. Agenda item number 3. So at this time, we're opening the floor to public comments. As a reminder, you have 3 minutes to address the commission, and county residents. You're invited to share your name. You don't have to, and also you are invited to let us know of any affiliation that you'd like us to be aware of. Again, no obligations. That said, as a reminder, agenda item number 3 is for public comments on items that are not already on the agenda. So we're going to start with people who are in attendance in the room. Do we have any public comments at this time? On the floor? I don't see any. Okay, so online, do we have any members of the public online?
But I do not see any public comment at this time. Please, oh, actually, here we go. Okay. We've got George Galamba. I'll go ahead. You have 2 minutes to talk.
Great. Thank you.
I just wanted to ask how one obtains a copy of the agenda.
Yeah, we have copies online on our website. I can go ahead and we can put it in the chat. So there's copies of the agenda and then copies of the meeting materials in there. And we can add them into the Zoom chat as well, if that would be helpful.
That would be great. Thank you. I couldn't find them on the website.
Okay, great. Yeah, we can help direct you there, but we'll attach them here for now. So thank you.
Any additional public comments? Thank you to the person who joined us earlier.
I do not see any more public comment at this time.
Okay, so this concludes our time on agenda item number 3. Moving on to agenda item number 4, please refer to attachment B in the supporting materials. So minutes from last month's meeting. Any questions, any feedback? If you think that the minutes were accurately reported and you're ready for a motion, please make one.
So moved.
Commissioner Ullman, do we have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Reed, questions, feedback, discussions? Okay, so we're ready to vote. Thank you.
Commissioner Malondo,
Aye.
Aye.
Commissioner Daddle,
Aye.
Commissioner Allman.
Aye.
Commissioner Serena. Aye. Commissioner Mavondo. Oops, apologies. Commissioner Austin.
Aye.
Commissioner Bennett.
Aye.
Commissioner Britton.
Abstain.
The motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to agenda item number 5. So we're going to listen to staff announcements and reports. So Julia, I think you're getting us started.
Okay, thank you all. And I want to start off by saying thank you all for your support the past month. It's been super helpful. This week or last week marks 1 month of Kristen being out on maternity leave. Also just wanted to update for you guys that she did have her baby on Friday, and his name is Silas Douglas Wraithwall, and he is adorable, and they're all happy, healthy, and very excited. So wanted to pass along some good news, and thank you all for all of the support this past month. It's been really helpful. So first off, I wanted to share that the Zero Emission Vehicle Action Plan, so that was that grant that we had applied for with Caltrans. That was the Sustainable Communities Grant that we'd received and back in August of last year. That RFP for consultant has been released. So it will enter into a 45-day bid window. It opened last Thursday, and it will be open until July 11th. I included the RFP for your viewing, but wanted to share along so you guys could pass out to any interested parties that are planning on submitting a bid. And we're really looking forward to that project. So that will close on July 11th. And then the anticipated start date for this project with the consultant will be at the end of August. Okay, and then for the next item, if you guys could go to the long-range calendar.
Do you want us to hold questions on each item or?
You know what, go ahead. Actually, yeah, I'll pause after that item. Thank you. If you guys have questions on the ZEV action plan RFP release or other questions on that item, feel
Yes,
free.
yeah, we're gonna take questions from the commissioners now, but for the members of the public, I will invite them to wait for the end of the staff announcements for the public comment. That way, you can ask more than one questions when you have the floor. So giving the mic to Commissioner Reed.
Thank you. I wanted to understand the process by which the consultant would be selected and whether there will be a review committee and whether there's opportunity for one of the commissioners or more to sit on it. And I have two questions. In reading the RFP, it seemed very ambitious in terms of the deliverables for the amount of money that we received in the grant. So I had some concern about that I think doesn't need to be discussed here, but it's certainly something that needs to be worked out with the consultant that's chosen in terms of key deliverables and deadlines and scope of work. So.
Yeah, I'll address your second point first. I agree, it's very ambitious. We had received the grant back in August of last year. And unfortunately, it just took about 8 months to get the notice to proceed from Caltrans. So we are full steam ahead now, but we are prepared to talk with our consultants and have chatted with Caltrans about our process moving forward since it is so ambitious. And then to your first point, we do not have an RFP panel selected yet. We have a rough idea, but we haven't made any formal decisions. And we have other partners on this project as well, like the Yolo Transportation District and a few other partners I don't have on the top of my head. However, and then also Yohadehi. And so if you're interested, I could bring this as an item. We're very happy to have more people on the panel. I think representative from the commission would be great. So I can go ahead and follow up on that. So far, it would mostly be internal. We asked the rest of the ZEV action team, and so far it's just going to be looking like county staff at the moment, but we'll follow up with you and the rest of the commission on that.
Thanks, Julia and Susan. Additional questions? Yeah, Commissioner Datte.
So if there's something in here that we think is not highlighted enough or something that's missing, when is it appropriate to bring that up, given that this has already been posted?
I think we would need to wait until the contracting process starts. However, I will need to check with procurement on the process for adding comments. I think if you want to send your comments to me, I can talk with county procurement and then get back to you on if we can't make any changes at this point since it's been released. But after that, I could talk and figure out how.
Terrific.
Okay.
Thank you, Robin. Anyone else? Yuri, are you able to see online if anyone online has a hand raised? No? Okay, thank you. So I think we're going to listen to the next update and then, can come back if needed.
Okay, great. So the next item is the long-range calendar that I'm directing you guys towards. That would be attachment E. There had been a couple of changes that I wanted to just walk through. But as you can see, our May topics. And then for June, we are going to have an interdepartmental green team meeting. So that was just added onto the long-range calendar. We're hoping to get feedback on CAP division assignments. And then also in June, we will be, as you guys know, the draft CAP will be released on June 7th. So we will be looking for commission member feedback at the June commission meeting. So there will be more to come on that. And we will also have the workshops. So we are going to talk about the workshops a little bit today. And then let you guys inform you of the procedure going forwards and what our next steps are for the workshops, since they are coming up quickly. And then in July, we're tentatively planning to cancel that meeting after all of the workshops, give everyone a break, and after the public comment period. And our team will be fast at work incorporating public comment. And then we will meet back in August for a summary of the CAP workshops, updates on the draft CAP and how it's moving along. And for now, those are the only updates, but I do foresee we'll bring back an update on the ZEV action plan. We will also likely bring an update. We have several contracts that we're working on right now, so that OPR Regional Resilience grant that we received for the Yolo Regional Resilience Grant Collaborative will be in the process of selecting a consultant, or will already have selected a consultant by the August commission meeting. So we'll bring that back to you all as well, along with an update on the CAP dashboard. So that will be in August, so a couple months ahead, but just wanted to flag the changes that were made for June, and then what to expect next month after the workshop, since the commission meeting will fall after that, and then the public comment period. But yeah, as noted, we'll talk through the public comment period today. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is going to be a gigantic document. And it crosses my mind that we might want more time for this commission to discuss it. I have seen how this commission operates in the past, and verbal efficiency isn't our strength. And so I wonder if suggesting tentatively that we might want to put some discussion of the draft CAP into both June and July to give this commission more time both to digest the enormous document and to give feedback.
Yeah, and I fully agree. It is huge. We will send it out to everyone on June 7th. So as soon as it's released, it will all be sent to you guys. However, the public comment period closes on July 10th. And so we gave a little bit of flex for the holiday. And so but after that point, we won't be able to take public comment anymore. So I think we can definitely work out kind of a phasing of sending it to the commission, if that would be helpful. But I'm happy to think about that suggestion and figure out a way to give the commission more time.
Yeah, just more time, and you can work it out as you fit best with everything else. But I
Okay.
think more than the hour that we might at most have here, or hour and a half,
Yeah.
would seem important.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. So we'll work that out for the June commission meeting. Thank you.
So what you suggest raises a question. In the long-range calendar in July, there is a tentative to have the YCCAC meeting canceled. The commission has usually a break once a year or so. But given the point that you're raising, that might call, so we're gonna need the commission, I think, to weigh in on that and to make a decision, so we know if we're having a meeting in July or not. If we decide to move forward with the July meeting, my suggestion will be that we focus only on discussing the draft of the cap and nothing else.
Okay, yeah, I'll confirm just because I'm not sure of the procedure after the public comment period closes. So I can confirm and then
That'd be great.
I can give an update via email to all of you.
That would be great, thank you. Commissioner Reed? Oh, I'm sorry. No, go for it.
I think it makes sense to do it at the June meeting because it'll be in the midst of the public comment period. And we'll have had it since, I just got rid of my calendar, but we'll have had it for a couple of weeks at least by that time. So I think in terms of moving this, along, that dedicating the June meeting to
Okay.
that conversation.
I wasn't suggesting removing it from the calendar in June, but adding more time because that might not be.
Yeah,
That's-
and I think doing that relieves us of the possibility of trying to do it in July and creating any more length to the amount of time that you all need to incorporate comments in creative final draft.
Yeah, thank you for that point too. After the draft cap public comment period closes, our team will be hard at work incorporating public comment. So I will confirm what maybe a more efficient procedure would be for us to have a fulfilling discussion in June, and then I will confirm if we can add more time. But I'll follow up with everyone on that.
Sounds good. And then, Mike, I see that you're on the floor. Another thing that is obvious, right, is we're going to discuss having first conversation on that in June anyway, so we can also see on that day, where we at and make an informed decision. Thank you. Yes, Micah?
I agree that we have taken quite a while to discuss various drafts and so forth. Maybe we could, instead of trying to carry over into July, plan on an extra long meeting in June with a dinner break.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. We'll discuss with our consultants on timing and then figure out what's appropriate and what you guys all prefer as well. So I will follow up on that. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Julia. Additional comments online? No? Okay, so we can move on.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Yuri for some really exciting updates on our home energy, our home efficiency programs. So I will pass it off to Yuri to give an update about that.
Hello, good evening, commissioners. So I'm Yuri, also known as Yuridiana Pantoja. I'm a Civic Sparks Fellow here, and I'm going to provide some updates for the home energy efficiency programs. And this program consists of the Home Energy Score pilot program, as well as the weatherization program. As a little summary and background, the Home Energy Score pilot program will provide free home energy assessments for up to 50 low-income households, homes. And for the weatherization program, we will offer free DIY weatherization kits to up to 300 households over 3 years. And so far in April, we received approval for using the ARP funding for both of these programs by the Board of Supervisors. And last Friday, on May 24th, we opened the solicitation period for CBO applications. And this will close July 13th, 2024, so this year. And we're currently looking for 3 CBOs to assist with outreach and education and community engagement with rural and low-income areas of the county. Compensation for CBOs will be $8,000 for their participation from fall 2024 to winter 2026. Next steps so far include applications being open from May 24th, which will close on July 13th. Partner selection will take place August 30th, 2024, and both of the programs will launch this fall of 2024. those are my short updates, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Quick question around the assessments and the findings. What kind of data will you guys be getting from those assessments? And also, once we've, capped the 300 households, will there be any effort to expand it to reach more households?
So for the Home Energy Score pilot program, we'll be using the Department of Energy scoring system, and we'll be taking all the data that they provide. And we're working with Earth Advantage, who is also working with us on what data we'll be providing. And I can gather the exact data and give you an email response by the end of this week, and as well as include the rest of the commissioners. And for the weatherization program, we are going to be giving out 100 kits per year for the next 300 years. And if we do exhaust them, we'll probably seek more funding through grants to expand the kits.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Reed and then Commissioner Datel.
As a follow-up to Commissioner Serena, on the data, it's for both of these programs. I think it's going to be really important in bureaucracy. There's a set of data that we call vanity statistics. And it's like, how many people did you see? And how many phone calls did you return, et cetera, that don't get into the nitty gritty of how many people did the work, what were the outcomes, how did the bills react, their energy bills react to the improvements that were made, as well as a debrief on the program in terms of what went well, what went wrong, what can we do better, and how do we make this more effective. On the second program, I just get a little bit concerned about giving out kits. And I wondered what type of technical assistance is available for the people that possess those kits to actually put them into action. And then again, the data that are collected be beyond that we gave out 300 kits to. This is how many were implemented. These were the most favored. Whether it was weather stripping the windows or putting something under the door, what was used the most, those kinds of data that are going to be really important if we want to contribute to improving the program and making it more effective over time.
Thank you for this comment. And for the kits data collection, so far we have surveys, post surveys for how we'll be assessing kits. And apologies, but can you repeat the first point you made about the weatherization? Oh, the weatherization kits for clarification.
The first comment I made actually applies to both, which is we really want to get away from the vanity statistics of we visited 50 homes to what was used, what wasn't used, how effective was it, and then what were the pluses and minuses in the program that could be massaged to be more effective, and what worked, what didn't work in terms of the outreach program. And the second one would be similar. We want to know what they did with the kits, but I was also asking the question of what kind of technical assistance would be available to them if they wanted some help.
Through the CBO's application, and that's what we're going to be looking for our CBOs to see how they can provide us with those technical assistance, especially towards elderlies and people with disabilities.
Great. And seniors.
Yeah, seniors as well. Thank you.
She said elderly.
Elderly.
Oh,
Elderly, senior,
Sorry.
elderly.
I'm hard of hearing, everybody. I don't get it all the time. Because I'm elderly.
Go there. Thank you, Commissioner Reed. Commissioner Datel.
But I pretty much had the same question, and that is how active are the CBOs in interacting with these folks? Are they just going to deliver this, or are they going to be available to help do the scoring in the first instance, and in the second instance to at least answer questions, direct people to where they can see great YouTube videos on how to put the weather stripping on? I mean, there just seems to me like there has to be quite a bit of interaction beyond just passing things out.
creating a toolkit for that purposes. So basically, it's going to go over a deep dive on what the kits are included, as well as instruction manuals. Video links would be a great idea, so thank you for that. And the CBOs will not be helping doing the home energy score pilots, since we will have assessors doing that. They will more be helping us with outreach and getting this out, getting the word out to residents here in Yolo County.
Thank you, Yuri. Any comments online?
I have one more comment.
Yes, yeah. Adelita?
I remember when you first came up, Yuri, thank you for your presentation, to show us some samples of what would be in the kits. And I also have a question about sometimes what I've seen in the kit is great. We need weatherization. We need, shower heads that spray less. But have you guys considered other types of items to include, such as like the window blocks, like like to cover the windows, like blackout curtains? I know that maybe that's too expensive. I don't know, but sometimes just blocking the sun out can help reduce energy bills if, turning on the AC becomes, a heavy burden for families. So I'm just wondering because I didn't see that part of any of that in the kit, like something to stop sun from penetrating so deeply into the households. I do think it's something that we should start to think about including in these kits. How do we stop the heat from penetrating households with, just even folks with double panel windows still, use those kinds of technologies. I just want to make a suggestion that might be something to think about including. I think they have like tint kits that can be placed, like it's like a film that you can put on windows also that helps prevent the penetration of the sun.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make those comments.
Thank you, Adelita. Commissioner Ullman. So we have the floor on fire, but yes, Mark.
Yeah. What if a customer needs help? What do they do then?
That's where our CBOs will come in and they would help assist the customers.
Site visit?
I still need to work out how that's going to look like, but
Okay.
I would love to include site visits if CBOs can assist with that as well.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just wanted to add to Adelita's comment that we totally agree. I think for right now, with what we're capable of for funding, we're providing, there will be assessments, so we can give people those recommendations for now, like the suggestions you just gave, and hopefully we can seek more funding to provide more as well.
Okay, thank you.
So before I rush online, yes, Commissioner White.
Just very quickly, excellent job on all of this. I'm thrilled to see it come about. When you talk about, this is so loud, y'all. When you talk about making toolkits and videos, I just want to make sure that you know about all the resources that already exist through the Weatherization Assistance Program.
And through, yes.
Department of Energy. Yeah, don't reinvent what they already made.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Before I ask if you have comments online, I'm looking at all of you very carefully. Any reaction, feedback? No? I have a few questions to ask, but I want to make sure that Bernadette or ex-officio commissioners have had a chance to weigh in.
No, thank you for asking.
Okay. Okay, so Yuri, rapid fire questions, right? Do you have a sense of how the families will be selected? So we have a limited amount of households, families that we can serve. So how will the selection be like?
We're definitely focusing on in the unincorporated areas of Yolo County. And with that, I still need to dive into how exactly they'll be selected.
Okay.
But any recommendations would be greatly appreciated.
And then out of curiosity, is this a project that you are, the Equity and Engagement Technical Advisory Committee is able to also weigh in on? I don't know if there's been a synergy or if it's even possible.
Not been synergy yet, but go on,
Yeah.
sorry.
I was going to say is we haven't spoken to Yuri about the program on our agenda, but
Yeah.
I think that's something we need to start incorporating. We've been heavily focused on the outreach around our workshops.
Yuri, how does that sound when the time comes?
That sounds great. I
Okay.
would greatly appreciate that.
Thank you. Just to note too, we'll be incorporating that. We just wanted to get the CBO solicitation response, and then for next month's E&E TAC meeting, we can bring that forward.
Okay, that makes sense. I can see the big picture. So getting CBOs on board, and then connecting with the ETAC. Commissioner Britton.
Yes, thank you. Just a quick idea, which is to improve efficiency by if one person wants twice as many weather stripping as in one kit and someone else doesn't use the weather stripping, maybe setting up a network to share the kits around. And maybe if there's a waiting list of people who couldn't get a kit, they could get leftovers from people who got the kits. Just a way of reducing waste and increasing the number of parts that are used.
I like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Commissioner Dutton.
Yeah, sorry, I thought of this when you were speaking. It seems to me there might also be some benefit in like encouraging pairs of households to do this. You know, when you have a buddy who's doing the same thing as you are, you know, you could kind of share experience and share materials and all of that. So maybe not just select people completely randomly, or maybe, and of course the CBOs will have ideas about this. Like, oh, we could recruit from this place of worship or from this Boy Scout or Girl Scout troop or whatever. But it does seem to me like some social enterprise here, as opposed to each individual household going it alone might have some benefits too.
Thank you. I noted that down.
Thank you, Robin. And then one more question for me. Have you had a chance when it comes to specifically this project to connect also with the Office of Emergency Services? So they are working, it's not the same project, but I know they've been like quite a few readiness plans that they are piloting and that have to do with, weather events and so on. So they might be interested in knowing that the sustainability team is also working on that. And then there might be also some collaboration there.
I have not reached out to them, but that's a great suggestion. Thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. I think I have one last question. If you're not tired of hearing my voice yet. Let's see, where is it? Come on. Oh yeah, so the document mentioned, it was something different. So I was wondering if, when it comes to the households, if we're talking single units, or if, there might be more than just one house, like, is there a way to?
We are talking of single units for both.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. And I think I'm going to, I think you've answered most of the questions. I'm going to stop here for now. Commissioner Bennett, you see, you got us excited on this topic.
I kept starting to say this last time, and then I'd say, oh, no, it will be too hard to turn into this, but I'm just going to say it and you can decide. Would it be possible to make it into a voucher program instead of giving them actual things that they may or may not want to use, but give a dollar limit and have the people who are going to use the kits, a list of possible things that they could get, and they ask for vouchers for what they want. So you don't have to carry, nobody has to carry any physical inventory, and you won't have any waste because people will take vouchers for what they want. It seems like you'd have to work through a retail outlet where they could actually go and get advice from the people that worked at the place. To me, it seems like there's a lot of efficiencies, but I don't know what the accounting and working it out to be able to pay a retail establishment or how you would work that out.
I'd have to see that process as well, but that's a good solution to reducing waste. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Yuri, do you mind just summarizing what Commissioner Bennett said? We couldn't hear all the way from here.
They're explaining to put the weatherization program as a voucher program. So rather than giving physical items to residents, we'll be giving them vouchers so they can go to the retail place and actually grab the things that they need from a list that we provide them. I would still need to see how that gets processed accounting wise, but that seems like a good idea to reducing waste, and it's just an idea I had to discuss with the team.
Okay. And then also remember from the presentation you had given on this item that you said people will be able to not get in the kit items they already have at home. So just again, for the sake of, waste management. Okay, thank you. Yes, Commissioner White. Yeah.
Be really quick this time. So do you know the HEAT program, the state-funded HEAT program? Heating Energy Assistance Program. There's a company called North Coast Energy Services. That's the Yolo County provider. And what they do is when people can't pay their utility bill, they will close the gap with funding. But they also do weatherization assistance program, and reaching out to them might be a way both to fill the pipeline with people who have repeatedly asked for HEAP help because they need it. And they might also be able to tell you what is the best way of providing kits, services, hand-holding, help, advice to folks who need it. And they're Yolo County wide.
For that, that's great.
Welcome.
Thank you, Chris.
Earn my money is the technical advice.
Thank you. Commissioner Reed?
Yeah, I think we can sit here and design the whole program for you if you like. But, my comments would be, when we got a pilot in terms of selection, our sample sizes are small, so we're not going to get a representative sample, but we do want some kind of an array of the kinds of people that we're trying to reach. And the second questioner that I had was with respect to the weatherization is an alliance with the Office of Emergency Services, whether anything in the weatherization kits incorporates something that also can help protect against wildfire smoke. And then the third thing would be whether there is a sort of a self-audit program where instead of following up on the recommendations that were made, something that gives people a checklist and they can go around and say, oh, my windows, how to test your window, how to test under the floor, how to look at some of the other factors that may be affecting the fireplace flue and the other things that contribute to loss of heat and inability to retain coolness. So that would pair well with not having people get a bunch of stuff to begin with, but having done an audit and give them more direction into what kinds of materials they might be able to request.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Reed, and everyone who very generously contributed to the conversation. So we are really at capacity when it comes to the time allocated to the agenda item. But again, we thank you for this update. I'm very excited about the project.
Thank you again. I appreciate all of your comments and suggestions.
Thank you. So we're moving along, and then as a reminder, we have guests also tonight. We'll be hearing two presentations from two guests. So agenda item number 5, moving on to sub-item D, CAP calendar order update. Tess is here. I was looking for you.
Yeah, I think we'll wait
At the end.
until the end. I'm just typing that out in the chat right now. But yeah, as a reminder for folks online, I see your questions. I see your hands raised. Don't worry. We will have public comment after we wrap up with the staff announcements and reports, which will be after Tess provides 2 updates.
Yeah, so the first update is really exciting. I have our calendar that's finally made. So this is approved. I met with the publisher last week and just made some little edits. Hopefully later tonight when I get home or tomorrow morning, we'll put in the final order. We're ordering 200 copies from Sierra Printing. The county has used this company numerous times and we're really pleased with how it turned out. I'm going to pass it around so you guys can see. But yeah, we're really excited and we'll be sending them to you as well. And Thank you for your patience during this process. It's taken a long time, learning a lot about like graphic design, and just because it looks one way on the computer, it doesn't look that way on paper. So, like going back to the drawing board, it took.
Thank you, Tess. And then before we move on to the next update, so I just want to once again really thank you for the extensive work you did and how you work with other organizations and the engagement around that. We're all very excited. Two quick questions. How will the calendars, be used and available? And then I understand that we had a limited budget in terms of how many calendars we could print. So is there a way for, if people wanted to see more in print, how will that happen? Like could maybe a printing company out of the goodness of their heart, and if they have the budget, offer to,
Yeah.
print or share additional copies?
So our budget, like we are already a little bit over just because like the proof, it's additional money to get that. We're still figuring out like how we're going to distribute it. We're thinking maybe like the libraries. We can always make more copies. So if we get the budget somehow, people aren't really going to do this work for free just because the ink and everything's really expensive. So if you have any recommendations, that'd be great. But yeah. We can always print more as long as we have the money. Like right now for 200, it's costing a little over $2,000. That's kind of a lot for us.
Yeah, it's
So-
a lot.
So offline, I'll be following up with you because I don't know if people wanted to contribute financially. I'm not sure how that works with the county. So there'll be a private follow-up. Okay. Thank you. Let's move on to the next update.
Yeah, and then really quickly,
Yeah.
we are going to be doing Juneteenth. So the next one is for our outreach calendar.
Okay.
We just added Juneteenth in West Sacramento to our schedule. That's on the 14th and from 5:30 to 8:30. It's on the sign-up sheet. We'll send it out again if anyone's interested in going. Yuri and Amy will be on point. We're really excited for that. And yeah, that's it.
So is that part of the summer outreach update?
Yes.
That was very quick. Okay.
That was good.
Great. Thank you. So this is the end of all the updates. So questions from Commissioner Dattel?
So is that the last one?
We're in the process of trying to confirm some more. It's been a process trying to reach out to the people who are organizing, sent like 5 calls, took a couple weeks to hear back. So we're still in the process of getting at least 2 more on the calendar.
Also just,
So some of these that are on here right now are after the workshops. For example, the one at San Pedro Park on Hobson Avenue in West Sac is on here for 6:29 and 6:30. So I'm just wondering if that's the case. I mean, we can still tell people that they can, find the document online and can submit individual comments, but it would be past the time of the workshops.
Yeah, that's
that-
an oversight on our end. Thank you for
Oh.
catching that. But the public comment period will still be open.
Right.
So we can definitely advertise that. But thank you for catching that.
actually, sorry,
Just wanted to be sure I understood. Okay.
Just to chime in, actually, that wasn't an oversight. We're just adding, that's going to be a living document. So we'll send updates as we add more items, but in July and through the fall, we're planning, after we finish this workshop series, we're planning to add more events for the late summer and early fall so we can really promote the CBO solicitation for home energy score. So we still have those on there as opportunities to volunteer, but the big focus being right now, the public comment period. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm going to pass this around if you want to flip.
Sounds good. And then while you do that, I think we can take questions online. So do we have any commissioners online with questions before we open to public comment?
We are commission members online. Does anyone have any questions?
None for me, thank you.
Thank you. So the floor is open for public comments. Any online comments?
We do, yeah. So I'm going to jump, just for future reference too, if you have questions, I know that there's the Q&A section, but we prefer that you wait until the end of the agenda item and then you can raise your hand and we'll get to your questions. But the first question from Meg Whitman is, does the EV grant include electric bicycles? And it does. So when we're doing the citing for recommendations for ZEV infrastructure charging placement, and where to establish CEV mobility services. That includes electric car share and electric bikes for residents and businesses in the unincorporated area. So I'll leave it at that, but I hope that answers your question. And then for your second question, Meg Whitman asked, how come everyone can't get a free assessment? This is a pilot program and we're a little bit restricted to our budget, but as Yuri mentioned, hopefully in the future, we can apply for grants to increase our funding and keep this program going for Home Energy Score.
Thank you.
And then we have two folks with their hands up. I saw Sheila Allen. If you have 2 minutes, so go ahead.
Yes, this is mostly Sheila Allen. I live in Davis. I'm Deputy Supervisor Provenza. A couple of comments primarily from my experience running a CBO. Older adults, and that's what we like to call them, older adults. We don't usually say elderly, just for language help. If you're hiring a CBO, they're probably going to know where to find the people, so you might not want to be too prescriptive, since it's not a lot of money for this pilot. I know you want to try to be as representative as possible, but perhaps to trust your CBOs to know where to find the people, that would be great. And then just a caution for the education that if you say, go look at this YouTube channel for your weatherization, depending on people's either skill or access to internet, that might not be the best way. So to be able to consider that when you're doing your outreach. And I'm very excited about these first 2 pilot programs. I think it's great. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Supervisor Allen. And I think we have another comment.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Allen. I am going to hand the floor over to Scott Stewart, who has his hand raised. Okay, so go ahead, Scott. You have 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Scott Stewart from Davis, California. Appreciate the work that's being done. It's quite the full agenda. I will just ask if for the ZEV program, I see the total budget is $303,000 to conduct a planning assessment. I don't think there's any implementation. I was wondering if that does not sound like enough. I mean, that does sound like enough money to plan for all of the things that need to be done to create a conversion plan to ZEV, but maybe there's more to it. So just a comment that it seems like enough to get us over toward implementation. And then the second comment is, Yuri, I just have in terms of the item 5C and implementing energy efficiency. I'm wondering if there is somebody who is or a company that is actually assisting in the implementation of these energy efficiency measures. There are so many different flavors of how this can go for a particular home. The most efficacious measure could be very different from one to another. So I'm just looking out for the idea that for the CBO, for the program, to have a professional who's seen a lot of different situations, consulting or offering to be a source of reference to some of what may be presented to the CBO and or the county. And thank you for my time.
Thank you, Scott, for the comment. Julia, did you want to add anything before we close the floor?
Yeah, I can follow up with you, Scott, on more information on the components of the ZEV action plan. It does mostly consist of public outreach and then forecasting future travel demand, grid capacity, and siting. So I can follow up with you after that. Our RFP is live, so you can access that as well. So I can follow up on that. For your second, I'm not sure, sorry, if you had a question or a suggestion on that one, but we're also happy to follow up with you on Home Energy Score. I do believe that we have within the CBOs, we're looking for that kind of expertise. So more to come on that, but thank you for your comments.
Okay. So thanking everyone. This is the end of our time on agenda item number 5. So we are now moving on to agenda item number 6. So I would like to welcome Christine. Please help me pronounce your last name because I'm not sure if it's Sicker or Sick.
Siki.
Siki,
Yes.
thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. So this is excuse me, presentation on water climate nexus and groundwater sustainability in Yolo County. Again, thank you for joining us, and we are all ears.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. Julia, does the presentation just come up or do you need me to give you something?
I am pulling it up
Thank
right
you.
now. Sorry, give you just
That's
a
okay.
second.
So as mentioned, I'm Kristen Sicki. I serve as the general manager for the Yolo County Flood Control and Water Conservation District. And despite our name, we're actually an independent special district, not responsible for all the flood control in Yolo County. Sometimes when there's a Google search during a storm event in Yolo County during the winter, we get called a lot, as you can imagine. And I also serve as the executive officer of the Yolo Subbasin Groundwater Agency. And so I'm here wearing that second hat. But happy to answer any questions that you have related to water that I may have a little bit of insight on. The Yolo Subbasin Groundwater Agency was formed in 2017. Maybe some of you are already aware of our agency. We were formed to comply with the new legislation that passed at the end of 2014. And we had a really excellent start because my predecessor, Tim O'Halloran, but also the county, the cities, water managers in other jurisdictions like the reclamation districts had already been part of what was known as the Water Resources Association of Yolo County. And so that had been going for about 20 years before SGMA came around. And then we were able to use that foundation to reach out to other entities in the county to see if we could form what was now this, kind of, it was a joint powers authority, but it had more emergency powers than a nonprofit such as the WRA had. So the Yolo Subbasin Groundwater Agency. And I have a slide that shows all the agencies that are part of it, but we have a 26-member board, which is a lot of members, but it's very collaborative, collegial. UC Davis is part of that board, Yochideki Winton Nation, the cities, the county, reclamation districts all up on the river there, the irrigation districts. We have the small community service districts. Anyone that was interested by way of a local agency, we wanted to participate on this. The Farm Bureau participates as an affiliated party. We have an environmental representative that serves on the board as well. And our main objective was to develop a plan, the groundwater sustainability plan. And the state legislation said it needed to be developed and submitted to the state by 2022. And it has a 20-year planning horizon. So by 2042, it needs to essentially define the sustainability goals that we want to get to by that time. I'm totally going off script here, Julia, and I'm so sorry.
Give me just a second. I'm having some issues.
And if you want, I can just give you the USB stick if you want to just, would that be easiest?
Sure. Yeah, we can go ahead and try that. Sorry about this.
Oh, it is right there.
I know, it's not, for some reason, it's not coming up.
Sorry about that. Maybe label content. Maybe that was blocking you right up there.
You know,
Sometimes that.
Okay, let me try that.
Okay. So in developing this plan, we used the best data and information we had from previous groundwater monitoring plans. And we had, I think, about 3 to use as the basis for this future plan. However, we ran into budget constraints and we ran into COVID during our outreach efforts. And so we felt a little hindered in how well we were able to communicate with the community on what needed to be considered or how we could get more feedback from the community. And so I say this because we really want to do a better job moving forward. And so I'm happy to have the opportunity to connect with you today. In the plan, we had land use up into 2016, and we submitted this plan in 2022. And so some of the feedback that we received by way of written comments from the community was, wait a second, you're not even considering current land use in groundwater sustainability. And so we recognize that that was a shortcoming and that that's something that we want to have as more current or more up-to-date data coming in from the state. That's something that thankfully they've gotten a lot better on. And so we are now updating our plan and we're using 2023 land use, which we feel like is much more connected to current day and what's actually occurring on the landscape. We have various climate scenarios to help us determine essentially what the impact will be in the future. And so thank you so much. And so that's where I think your kind of our nexus will be most maybe in the future, where we would love input from you on our updated climate scenarios and whether that's kind of something that makes sense to you or whether you're aware of better climate data. So if you could advance the slide, that'd be great. And thank you again for, oh, this is not the right one. I'm sorry. It's the CAC one. Oh yeah, there you go. That was it.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Right, does it?
It was not, I was able to get it up from the email.
Okay.
So I had not gone to my
Then
drive yet.
maybe, no, you
Okay,
know what?
here we go.
Maybe I just filled up the
Titles, like some of them.
Okay, we'll just do
make
this.
some concept, but it's just touching my heart.
Perfect. Just that second one is, there you go. Great. So this is just a map that shows you the extent of the Yolo subbasin. It's almost contiguous with the county boundaries. However, it recognizes the alluvial aquifer, the alluvial basin. So where the water bearing units are. We have, as I mentioned, 26 member agencies. They're shown in the colored polygons here. And we have 5 distinct management areas because since it is such a large county or a large subbasin, we recognize that there's very distinct hydrogeology that occurs within the subbasin. Typically in Clarksburg, groundwater is at about 6 feet. They spend a lot of time pumping the water out. But up in Yolo Zamora area, there's been some experience of subsidence. Next slide, please. DWR approved of our plan and they provided many corrective actions. And so this map is showing the Yolo subbasin in that periwinkle blue, and then it shows our neighbors that we coordinate with closely. To the north, we have Colusa subbasin. To the east is Sutter, North American and South American subbasins, and then to the south is Solano subbasin. Because we recognize that the groundwater doesn't stop at the county boundaries. And so thankfully we have very good relationships with our neighbors. We coordinate on data, modeling, results, outreach efforts, kind of shared experiences and stuff like that. And so with DWR approving of our plan, now we have our next marching orders for how we can improve the 2027 update. And so I will review some of those here in the next slide, or next few slides, I should say. The long story short for the plan, it's a lengthy document, but long story short, which I'm sure a lot of you are already very aware of, is that on the eastern portion of the county, we have plenty of surface water that's available. In central Yolo, in the purple, we have a mix of surface water and groundwater that's relied on. And then shown in the brown is primarily the groundwater dependent areas. And so in this plan, we essentially said, we'll make sure that with the surface water that's available, with the banked or recharged groundwater, we'll be able to get through these dry periods. But essentially, we're having to subsidize some portions of the subbasin that only have access to groundwater with the allotment or allocation of surface water. And that's going to be harder to do in the future. Right now, the state has proposed amendments to their Bay Delta plan based on water quality objectives, where they're essentially requesting for the reclamation districts on the east side and many other water agencies to give up some of their surface water rights to be able to meet certain water quality objectives and to improve salmon. And so we're just now starting to have conversations about what that will look like in the Yolo subbasin and how we will be impacted from a water budget perspective if all the wonderful Sacramento River water rights are curtailed in the future. Next slide, please. We have, I think, a fabulous website, but I'm sure it could still use some improvements, yologroundwater.org. We have a map of all of our monitoring wells on there. We have over 500 monitoring wells in our system. Some go back to the 1950s, very robust network. If you can change it to satellite view, but if you zoom in and select one of the monitoring wells, it will pull up a hydrograph for you. So you could see this hydrograph is showing the depth to water for one of the wells that's been selected. And so this provides you with a snapshot in time of how the water level's been since about, looks like since about 1950s to 2023. And this data, I should say, the monitoring data is essentially the foundation of our plan. That's what we use to show the state, historically, we have been sustainable. And ultimately, assuming we can figure out the impact of land use conversions in the climate, we want to continue to be sustainable. And we want to be able to be transparent in sharing our data with the state so that they can believe what we're saying. Next slide, please. Oh, yes, please.
Question before you move on. Can you go back? That yellow line is high good or bad?
High is good.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Yeah, so the 0 is essentially from the ground. That's ground level, I should say. And so it's 20 feet there, 30 feet, 40 feet. The low point there was about 1976, 1977 drought is when that well really dropped because there was so much groundwater pumping occurring in the area.
Okay, I'm thinking we're looking at a well and the yellow line is good. Look, there's
Oh.
a well. 'Cause
Oh.
it's really deep. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a quick question. Where is
Yes.
that well located?
Yeah, I apologize. I realized as it was selected, it didn't highlight it. I can follow up and tell you exactly where it is. I want to say it's probably around central Yolo area. It's one of the yellow dots. But yes, it is a good well.
So you can spend many hours on this page.
Oh, yeah. It is fun. Yes.
It's really impressive.
Yes, and I should say the red dots are our real-time or continuous monitoring wells. And so those are ones that you can really see the changes on a day-to-day basis if you're interested. Next slide, please. Thank you. One thing that was thrown our way in 2022, the governor passed an executive order requesting that the counties now receive written verification from groundwater sustainability agencies for any new well permit activity in the county. And that was something that we were not prepared for. It's not something we thought would be in our wheelhouse, but it was actually a really good opportunity to connect with county staff and partner in sharing data and kind of problem solving. It ended up being quite a big effort on our part. We spent over $125,000 and developed a 2-tier process, but it's meant to recognize maybe some of the areas in the county that we are a little bit concerned about continuing development or about the impact to groundwater levels may be declining. And so we went through an analysis to focus on those areas and say, okay, where are areas that we're a little bit worried about and we should be having additional due diligence about what, a potential impact would be if a new well was put in. And so on our website also, we have this map that you can pull up. It's interactive. Everything outlined in red is what's known as a focus area. And if you are proposing to drill a new agricultural well in a red area, we have a 2-tier process. The first tier, the YSGA goes through our review to determine what maybe the impacts would be on groundwater levels, interconnected surface waters, total dissolved solids or water quality, and then on land subsidence. And based on that analysis, we will then either provide written verification if we don't have concerns, or we will provide a request for there to be a hydrogeology report completed. And one thing I kind of like about this two-tier is it provides, it doesn't put all the cost on the landowner necessarily. It helps us to really drill down on like what are the concerns and how can we essentially streamline a hydrogeology report so that it's more focused on really getting to the heart of the problem. And so far we've had 2 wells go through this process, and it seems to be working, but we need a few more to kind of see how it really is and maybe adapt to it. And again, we've been coordinating really closely with county staff and providing updates to the Board of Supervisors. And so fingers crossed, this is a good process. And I imagine it's going to be something that will need to be, once the governor's executive order goes away, will probably need to be embedded in a well ordinance or some sort of new regulation in the county. Next slide, please. The Yolo Subbasin Groundwater Agency was fortunate enough to receive almost $8 million in grant funding for implementing some of the projects that we had in our groundwater sustainability plan. It's very exciting, but with money comes a lot of work. And so we're just trying to figure out how to manage all these projects now. And in the next slide, I believe I have a list of those projects. Thank you. So the main thing we wanted to do is have the state help us to update the groundwater sustainability plan. And again, we want to update the water budgets with recent land use and climate data. And then we want to have the appropriate forecast scenarios into the future. We need to complete a GPS subsidence survey to validate the satellite data that's currently coming out. We need to consider a just and equitable way to fund the YSGA. For the past 7 years, it's essentially been the member agencies that have been funding it out of general fund funds. And so we're trying to figure out a better way to have it be connected potentially to the property. And then in the Hungry Hollow area, we have received some concerns with declining groundwater levels and expansion of previously unirrigated ground. And so we carved out a special project for Hungry Hollow to work with the constituents to develop a smaller water budget so that we could come up with projects or management actions to try to find a way for them to become sustainable. Again, the subbasin is so large, we know we're going to need to focus on kind of the more localized overdraft issues. And that'll be a good test case for us to see how it works and potentially use as a model in other parts of the subbasin. Additionally, the Yolo County Flood Control and Water Conservation District has a winter water recharge program where we divert flows off of Cache Creek during the winter months. We bring it into our 160 miles of canals. We allow it to recharge the aquifer. We'd really like to expand this onto farmers' fields if they're interested, if they have property available. It gets to be pretty difficult with scheduling based on the storm passing, based on field conditions and whether or not a farmer can bring water on. But one thing we found to be successful is identifying where there may be ponds that they have and finding ways to get the recharge or the winter water into their ponds to recharge extra space or ground that way. City of Winters is completing feasibility studies to look at alternative surface water supply and to look at a recycled water supply because they are concerned about being primarily dependent on groundwater. Yolo Zamora Recharge Project is the China Slough extension from the Yolo County Flood Control and Water Conservation District's canal up to Yolo Zamora area. We're looking at, or we're trying out right now, a trickle flow recharge. And then we have some gate installations to automate, that area. And we want to find a way to potentially have long-term recharge up to Yolo Zamora so that we can help with some of the subsidence concerns up there. And then the last one is the Dunnigan Area Recharge Program. And Dunnigan Water District has been working on this, I believe, for 2 years now. The Tehama-Calusa Canal runs from north to south, and they have creeks that are perpendicular to some of their, to the canal where they have some dewatering gates. And so during the winter, they've been able to open those gates and allow for flows from the Tehama-Calusa Canal to go into Buckeye Creek and Bird Creek. And so I think they're going to keep doing that project as much as they can in addition to farm field recharge. And some of these projects I did offer to Kristen as part of incorporation into the Yolo County Climate Action and Adaptation Plan. Hopefully I said that right. Next slide. Additionally, we just received an announcement of an award from the Bureau, the government's, federal government's Water Smart Applied Science Grant. And so this will be building on some of the SIGMA implementation grant funding that we have. But it's also going to include a few other things such as development and modeling of projects and management actions to support policy decisions. So putting some of those projects through the model to see how we can better illustrate the benefits or the impacts, and development of a seasonal forecasting platform and improvement of the data management and public data access. And the next few slides will drill into these a little bit. So next slide, please. Thank you. So for the groundwater model improvements, we need to incorporate new climate change data, purchase up-to-date land use data, develop future land use change scenarios, correct modeling of managed wetlands. That was something that CDFW requested we do. And I know we're going to be working closely with the county and the Yolo Habitat Conservancy on the managed wetlands data they may have access to. We also want to incorporate economic elements into the model about impacts maybe from decisions in fallowing ground. What would the economic impact be, or in changing certain land use to another thing? And then use the model to assess the domestic well impacts. And that is something that we are doing our best to protect. It was hard rolling out the groundwater sustainability plan, not only during COVID and not being able to have large workshops, but also during the drought when we said, look, we're sustainable. And we had domestic well owners, on the Zoom saying, no, you're not, my well's dry. So it felt very disingenuous, and something that we recognized we really need to come up with a solution to ensure that there is some sort of either domestic well mitigation, or we're ensuring there's not impacts to those domestic wells. Next slide, please. And then here's some of the projects. We do need to start talking about demand management strategies. That wasn't something that was originally discussed in the plan, but that is something that DWR asked for us to do, which essentially means how do we use less water or how do we find ways to conserve or be better with what we have. And so developing those, modeling those, and then we need a financial analysis of some of those demand management strategies also to determine kind of how we implement them if there needs to be a cost consideration. And then here's just a summary of the projects where we're showing the estimated acre feet per year where they could recharge, and how that data would be brought into our model. And so as you can see, the City of Woodlands proposing a fourth ASR well, and they estimated about 700 acre feet per year of additional storage. Next slide, please. And then this is, I believe it's the last one, but it's a 7-month forecasting of water conditions. So what we'd really like to do is using climate forecasts from UC Merced that's currently being used at the State Water Board. We want to have a better way to prepare ourselves for dry periods and to ensure we're doing a better job of decision-making, not only on the ground, but also communicating to the public on kind of what to expect or how we can best prepare for dry periods. And so we're hopeful that having a seasonal forecasting platform will assist in some of that, in preparing us for potentially how low groundwater levels will get, who may be impacted, and how we potentially may need to consider following of ground or making, kind of being more nimble, I should say. Next slide, please. Okay, I lied. One more. This is the improved data management and access. So we want to essentially make a more robust database that's connected to each of the sustainability indicators in our groundwater sustainability plan. So primarily right now what we have is we have the groundwater levels, and we're demonstrating it on our website from a levels perspective. But what we'd really like to do is get more sophisticated and have water quality data up there for viewing, have the subsidence data connected, and then have a better relationship between creeks and groundwater wells to show you where the interconnected surface waters are. So that's a bit of a dream, and we're hoping some of this Bureau funding will help us to work through that. And then next slide, I think, is our upcoming priorities, which I believe is really my last slide. We need to establish these management area advisory committees. As I mentioned, the subbasin is really large. We have very unique hydrogeology. Thankfully, Commission Member Bennett has been very proactive in Cape Valley and kind of creating a Cape Valley committee, water committee, I should say. And so we really want to do that for other management areas where we can have advisory members on those committees, and they can help guide us. They can tell us what the local concerns are, the project's management. And it'll allow us to respond to local conditions, hopefully better than we have been. We need to update the GSP and implement the grant projects, covered that plenty, create a long-term funding strategy. We want it to be thoughtful and equitable. There's a lot of assessment fatigue going on right now, so I'm not looking forward to this one. And we need to evaluate the water market potential. So in the areas that we are seeing a need to potentially use less water, we'd like to start to create a system that would allocate that water. We could track the amount or the unit that goes to a certain property. We could find a way to have recharge credits, and so that it could be kind of transactional and not emotional if possible. We'd like to just keep it to a certain budget and allow for there to be a smart method or process there. And then connecting the land use planning with water availability. This is something that I've talked to Supervisor Provenza about a lot, is how can we do a better job working with the county's general plan schedule to the GSP's goals align with general plan goals, and make sure the water and land are talking to each other. And then, of course, we'd also like to coordinate with other county plans as much as possible. So thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate you dealing with my technical difficulties at the beginning.
Thank you very much for this very thorough presentation. So I'm opening the floor to fellow commissioners. Do you have any questions for Kristen? Commissioner Britton.
Yeah, just a simple sort of qualitative question. Climate modeling is hard, and I admire you're going to the seasonal level. But one of the things that we know already that every climate model says is, and you said it, you implied it, that droughts are going to get longer and worse, right? So have you thought through using the vast historical data you have, which encompasses many droughts, some of which are severe, and simply like just putting in a scale factor and say, can we deal with 79 times 2, right? And as a way of just sort of back of the envelope, helping to guide your future robustness against worse droughts?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So we did have the historical record of the climate where we actually used that to say, okay, if it's same as history, we'll project that into the future. But we didn't do what you're suggesting, is to kind of select a more heightened period or to have 5 dry years altogether. And so I think that's a very wise request or idea. And I like it. My wheels are kind of turning right now, because we've been working with the Stockholm Environment Institute. And so we're just now brainstorming with them on how to set up these future climate scenarios. And so I think something like that could be brought in as an alternative.
Probably have smarter people who could do it better than
Yeah.
not 2, but 2.43.
Right, exactly. Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Serena.
Thank you for a thorough presentation. And I know I was kind of like reading along. There was a lot of acronyms, so I was
Sorry.
It's okay. I was like, what does that mean? I noticed that you had called out the map and how some of the creeks were outside of the, Yolo County lines. And I don't know if you mentioned how you're dealing with like those waters outside of our county lines? I don't, because I was reading and just like the slides are going
Hey,
fast.
Yeah. Yeah, so we still have a lot of room for improvement, but we meet with each of the other GSAs that are neighboring our borders. Some of them we meet on a quarterly basis, some we meet twice a year. And we talk about essentially new monitoring efforts that are underway. And so, for example, Puda Creek has, I want to say it's 3 or 4 shallow monitoring wells that they put south of Puda Creek, Solano Groundwater Agency did. And they asked us if we'd essentially mirror that and put shallow monitoring wells on the north side so that we could learn more about like, what's the interaction there?
Right.
You know, who's pumping
Right.
Puda Creek's water away. And so things like that, Sacramento River, we've done the same thing where we've looked at our monitoring. And so we're coordinating on monitoring and then modeling analysis and on sharing just any new random insights, right? Like trends we're seeing or something like that. Yeah.
Good to
So
know.
hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, good
Okay.
to know, just because the waters don't recognize borders.
Right,
And it's so
exactly.
important
Yes.
to, their water is life and we have to, treat it as a living body and not as, okay, you're cut off right here. So I appreciate that. And also you mentioned Woodland was requesting an ASR well. What is the ASR stand for? I'm sorry.
Yes, no, that's okay. An aquifer storage and recovery well. So they have 3 of
see.
them right now where they treat excess water from Sacramento River. And once they treat it, they'll inject it into the ground, into a well that's been properly constructed. They've gone through all the permitting and they essentially store the water underground and then they can pump it out later if they need to use it for the city's conveyance.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Commissioner Dattel.
So it's clear that different kinds of agricultural land use intersect with these issues of how much water is available. And that's one place farmers can go, right? They can respond to the drier years by planting a different crop. Or
Yes, yes.
so we're kind of interested on this commission in, farming practices that are climate friendly. So you might still have the same crop, but you might, have a cover crop, you might have no till, you might,
Yes.
all the ways, that you can try to store carbon and not be quite as disruptive and all that. So is that in your models anywhere?
We're actually working with farmers right now to figure out how to quantify the benefit or how to include that dynamic in projects. Bullseye Farms is a really good example. They've been doing a lot of excellent work with cover cropping, and they've just seen such incredible results with how much the soil has retained water and what they're doing and how much less water they then need to use. And so we're trying to figure out how to get that kind of benefit embedded into the project so that we could better illustrate it to farmers to say, look at when they do it this way, this is how much water they save, this is how much money you save, so that it can actually be something that people want to adopt. There's also the Hungry Hollow area. Good Humus Farms, Annie Main and her family have also been kind of leading discussions like that in the Hungry Hollow area about no-till and other ways that we can try to save water as much as possible.
Thank you, Commissioner Ullman.
I've got maybe a 3-parter here. You mentioned some wells have gone dry. Have they recovered?
Yes, they have recovered. The majority of them recovered. There were some there were some ones that were too shallow in the way that they were built that have not recovered yet. We've tried following up with some landowners too, and I think it's either they weren't really interested in telling us more information. But we've been working with Yolo OES because when wells would be reported, they'd coordinate it with us. We'd go out and actually verify that it was dry. And so we do have a list of the remaining ones. And I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but for the majority, they did recover, which was good.
Where were they located?
So the Plainfield Ridge, for some reason, got pretty lit up during the drought. And we had some that were on the sort of the west side, kind of south of the Plainfield Ridge in the Corcoran Hill area. And then we had a few random ones here and there. But the Plainfield Ridge is essentially the Dunnigan Hills runs underground. And when the groundwater table gets too low on the west side, it no longer allows for the water to kind of go over the ridge or act as a waterfall. And so we were thinking that since the levels got so low, there could no longer be that continuous flow to keep those wells in place. Or to keep them sustained. But the tough thing too is that there's been more development in that area. So there's kind of a higher concentration of wells there too.
Okay, this is my final point is, how bad is the subsidence and where has that occurred?
Subsidence in Yolo County is primarily in Yolo, Zamora. And again, I apologize for not having the number. I want to say about half a foot has continued since 2015 up in Yolo, Zamora. But it's gone back decades. I think it was worse at one point and it's kind of maybe gotten better. The state is being very prescriptive about subsidence. They actually have an assembly bill that they're sponsoring this year to create a statewide well moratorium in areas that are experiencing a certain amount of subsidence. So I think there's going to be some kind of top-down changes about maybe not allowing subsidence to occur much more.
Or trying to stop it?
Trying to, yeah.
My impression is that's irreversible. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah. Once you get probably past half a foot, yes, that would be considered inelastic.
Thank you, Commissioner Reed.
It's really hard to get your head around all these issues and how they integrate. So congratulations on being able to lay it out for us in a way that's systematic and we can sort of find those points of entry as Commissioner Daddle did in terms of what are we doing that intersects with what you're doing and how we can have complementary policies that support each other's objectives.
Right.
So, and I think it's going to take a lot more deep diving to figure that all out. But at the end of the day, if one steps back and looks at this issue overall, there are limits to growth. We're not going to create more water, and so I was really happy to see number 5 in terms of integrating the land use, not only what it's used for, but how we use it, as Commissioner Daddle referred to with our regenerative agriculture push. And the other thing that PPIC came out today with a report on biodiversity and how we it looks like what they're recommending. It's a lot of changes in terms of how we integrate multiple objectives into our management system. So I think working with you on that is going to be a connection point for us in terms of co-benefits and ecosystem services that we can amplify through our joint policies. One of my biggest concerns or interests, Commissioner Allman asked about subsidence. What do we know about contamination or the need for restoration of the quality of our groundwater supplies? That's one. And then I'm interested also in the climate change arena at this point in time, modeling's under fire for relying on historic data to forecast the future and having it be out of whack in terms of the extent of climate change and the speed of climate change, especially with respect to overshoot of the temperature targets for the Paris Agreement and everything's happening a lot faster. It's going to be hotter than we thought it was going to be. There are more extreme weather events, and among those are the higher precipitation periods. We've got that on one hand and the drought on the other. So in terms of recharge and storage and capturing the extreme events, I'd be interested in what what's going on there. And of course, that's another intersection for us as well. And the whatever kind of restoration of the quality of the groundwater is facilitated by some of the regenerative agriculture practices that and uses in terms of things like biochar versus fertilizer, et cetera, increasing the health of the soil as part of that process. So if you could just give me a little bit about some of those issues and how they're integrating in your future work and
Yes.
really be touchstones for us as we go forward in terms of our implementation.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So water quality is definitely something that we need to, as an agency, the GSA, need to learn more about. Originally, in interpreting the legislation, we were thinking that by way of referencing the existing regional, state, local water quality programs, that would be sufficient. And then we'd say, okay, if we're going to do a project or management action, we'll make sure to dive into the details of any water quality, degradation of water quality or impacts. And the state came back and said, well, actually, you need to do a little bit more. So we're kind of going back to the drawing board to figure out how to get a handle on all the different programs that actually can be integrated into, our management efforts. And that's a little bit tougher because they're very siloed. Even though the state has one, database you can go to, it's still very siloed by specific program that they have. And so we need to learn more about that. And we also have concerns about the water quality impacts from maybe doing recharge projects, with just doing it and not thinking about it. If we're advancing or trying to think about a farm field, we need to think about how recently it was fertilized and things like that. And then also water quality impacts of, well, if wells are being drilled deeper and they're pulling up, salts or something different that may not be in that first strata, and then they're applying it to the land. How's that going to work here in a few decades? And so, yes, it's definitely something that is on our radar and we want to do a better job of managing and learning about, but it's something that we're still pretty infant on. So I apologize for not having a better answer on that. And then for the recharge, primarily during what we call high flow events, but it ends up being the tailwater because we need the sediment to drop out of Cache Creek. We will recharge the water into the district's canal system. And we have started to use some ponds that were available because ponds are essentially a safe space. But we're hoping to find more creative ways. There's some farmers that have pipelines that extend off of our canal system that go up to sloughs and they go up to creeks. And so we're hoping to find ways to do a better job of kind of like recirculating some of this winter water so that we can move it around and do more trickle flow, or we just put a little bit of water into a creek and it can slowly infiltrate. And so we're trying to be creative and thinking of ways that the infrastructure isn't too expensive. It may already exist, and we can kind of take advantage of the existing conveyance that's been established.
Well, congratulations. I mean, it's a lot of work and a lot of work left to do. But
yes, a lot of work left to do. Thank you.
I'm sure we look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bennett.
Yes, so one of the things that Kristen mentioned, that we were in the KP area trying to put together a group that would do watershed management for community watershed management for Cache Creek. And we're hoping that will help advance the approaches of the management areas, but that it will coordinate the kinds of things that we're interested in for climate change and the water issues, particularly by looking at things like how to stretch out the supply of water by using the soil, the layer of soil that the plants are growing in, and really look at the dependencies from the uplands where the grazing lands are, and how we can encourage more infiltration and more water availability for the plants because the water will stay in the soil, and really try to even out both the flooding potential and the drought potential by slowing and spreading the water. And so Kristen is working with with us to establish that group. We're trying to apply for a grant to do that, but we're hoping that that will be something of an example of how you can have a localized area that can come up with what's appropriate for that area and the conditions there, but that might be exportable to other of the management areas also, so they can do what's the similar things that are appropriate. And I'm mentioning the agriculture, but the restoration for natural areas also has a lot of potential for having that effect on the soil.
Thank you. Thanks, Micah. Commissioner Britton.
Yeah, quick follow-up on that. Have either of you thought about these low-rise dams that have been successfully used in a lot of places, like in Colorado? Because that's exactly the kind of thing you're talking about, that just hold water for a little while, greater density of plant, so carbon sequestration in the same places, biodiversity, just win-win-win all around. Have you guys got that on your radar as a countywide endeavor?
Yes. Sorry, Micah, do you want to? Okay. So the YSG is currently talking with USDA Sustainable Agricultural Water Systems Unit. They are trying to find willing landowners essentially along the west side, kind of. Yes. Okay. Thank you. But theirs is more of, have you heard of soil buns?
No.
Where they create an earthen dam with the right soil type, and then they vegetate it, and it's something that essentially holds the water back, and then it slowly infiltrates. And so it's a little less invasive, but we are also interested in those dams, and it's something that you can do all up along the hill slope. And so please email me.
I will email you.
Perfect.
Maybe
Awesome.
my neighbors will take it.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Great. Thank you all. I have a few questions. I'll be quick. I was wondering, so we couldn't see the list, of course, of your 26 partners, and I was wondering if the Yolo Basin Foundation is one of them. And the reason I'm asking is because they have this focus on habitat conservation, which with the question about biodiversity that was raised, we know that that has an impact on water retention and filtration, right?
Yolo Basin Foundation is not a direct member, but I would love to connect with them if you have a contact.
They do.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you very
Okay,
much.
I'll make a note. And then you mentioned when it comes to the City Winters, alternative surface water supply. And I was wondering if you could, just share briefly what that means. And there is a reason I'm asking, and I'll let you know why after.
Yes, of course. So they still need to do the study, but at least what we're conceptualizing is investigating whether they could have water from Lake Berryessa to come down Puda Creek, potentially have maybe an offset or irrigation supply from Cache Creek to come through. And then I want to say the other crazy one is Sacramento River. I mean, I don't know if it would physically be Sacramento River, or if it'd be some sort of trade that would occur within the system somehow. But those were the three surface water sources. And then the recycled water treatment plant is just for them to investigate what the cost would be to develop a plant to recycle water and then use that somehow in their system.
Great, thank you. And then one of my almost last question. I want to be mindful of time. So when it comes to our climate action and adaptation plan and our relationship with farmers, so as you know, many of the local farmers rely on groundwater, the groundwater and the wells. And understand, what's being set in place, but I was wondering if your organization is the one looking into more immediate measures when it comes to water retention. And I'm talking, when we have floods, when it's raining, is there something that exists that is not too costly that local farmers can use to retain storm or rainwater on site, like directly? And again, my question was, are you the organization looking into that, or if not, who should we be asking?
We've briefly discussed it at various meetings about, well, you know what the low-hanging fruit is here? Let's just capture the rainfall. It seems to be a little bit of an uphill battle, though, with some of the perennial crops because they need it to drain. And so it's also something we've been trying to work with UC Davis on is how can we maybe debunk some of the myths about certain crops that can't handle water for long periods? And how can we do a better job of thinking through the potential there? I think that it's also been discussed about like, well, should there be some sort of grading ordinance that would consider this on the back end? Or should we have some sort of incentive that could be offered from the YSGA? With cover cropping, I mean, that should help. But I think sometimes there's a lot of things that farmers have to do. And so adding on an extra thing that may not be beneficial to their, business or their operations kind of just feels like a bear. If it could be something that's embedded in our allocation system where we have credits and we can have incentives incorporated like that, I'm all for it.
Right. Thank you very much. And my last question. So you mentioned forecasting, right? So, and I was wondering when you do assessment or when you start anticipating, having models of, anticipation in terms of what we can expect. Does that take into account the nut production? The reason I'm asking is because I've noticed over, I don't know, the past year or so that several farms that were growing nuts have been closing. And I've just had questions about the impact on, those are one of the most water, in terms of water usage, they use up quite a lot. So do you anticipate or have you observed that has helped with the replenishment of the wells and so on?
That is something that we talked with some farmers about when we were proposing this seasonal forecasting tool, is that we want to help you to make better decisions. And so it very much will depend on where they're at in the cycle of the perennial crops they may be growing. But yes, ideally it helps with those sort of decisions. And you had said something else there. Oh, the commodity prices is kind of like the wild card, right? Like, if walnuts are all gone, are almonds next? And what does that do to the water budget? Are we going to have a bunch more water? That'd be cool, but I also like almonds. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure how to kind of prepare for those things, right? That are completely out of our control. And so we want to bring economists into the equation too, to help us kind of navigate that, to better understand sort of the impact or the benefit that it may provide.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And then we promise we'll let you go soon, but do we have any reactions online from
We do.
commissioners?
I see Christine. So Christine, you have the floor.
So thank you, Kristen. That was an excellent presentation, and I thank you for that. So my comment is basically relating to long-term dealing with the climate forecast and the fact that we know as we go forward, it will get hotter and hotter. And we know as we go forward that both plants and animals will need more water, existing ones, no matter what we do, whether it's tomato plants or almonds or things like that. So are you working on ways to sort of, when it comes to land use planning, ensuring that those that are there now go forward, even given what the increase in temperature and the increase in their use might be because of climate change, so that we don't overshoot the budget for the plants and the people? Just thinking that's something that needs to kind of be included long-term, and it kind of goes along something with what Commissioner Britton was talking about as well. Thank you.
Yes, that's a very good question. So in updating the 2023 land use, we're going to be able to see kind of what our new baseline is and evaluate whether we've already kind of gone over the threshold or not. And based on that, it'll allow us to consider additional land use scenarios where we could potentially push it to the brink to say, okay, well, really, how much more can we expand ground, or how much more conversion can occur, or, what's the max budget? And so with that, I think it's going to be pretty telling to us about maybe where we need to either reduce consumption or conserve water, or we need to kind of be smarter about investigating, mitigation easements or something like that. So I'm sorry, Christine, but it's kind of a TBD from here.
Well, thank you. I'm just glad it's on the TBD.
Yes, yes.
Thank you, Christine, for your question. Any additional public comment online?
No, not at this time.
In the room, do we have any public comment?
Or actually, I'm sorry, sorry.
Yes. Oh,
There's one comment in the chat from Scott Stewart. He says, it is apparent and welcome to see the very great combination of where data meets data. I look forward to the collaboration between the YSGA and the YCCAC and to the policy support of one with the other. Land water use is headed towards more required management.
do you know if Scott is in the audience? Can you see? He left?
Oh, yeah, he's still in the audience.
Okay, so I just need to make a very quick disclosure. So we've been graciously reading the comments in the chats, but ideally, if people are in the audience, it's good that they write in the chat so they don't forget their questions. But in moving forward, we'll need them to actually express it themselves. That's for transparency measures, we're supposed to proceed that way. So thank you to Scott Stewart for the comment. Yes, Julia.
Scott just raised his hand. So Scott, I will go ahead and give you the floor.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, NJ, for your explanation. And will just reiterate very quickly. It's a pleasure to see Christian's work be presented to this commission. There is a body of people who are following very closely the water issues in the county. And those energies, I think, will be welcome by the commission as we go forward. And thank you for my time.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it. So we have a comment in the room, I think. Kristen, did you want to react? I saw you nod.
Thank you, Scott.
Okay. So do we have a public comment in the audience? Yes? Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Juliet Beck. Nice to meet you, and thank you for the presentation. I have like 3 quick questions. Maybe we could do rapid fire. When you talk about a balanced water budget, is there any water set aside for nature, or do you consider only, human development uses for water?
Good question. In the plan, we consider groundwater dependent ecosystems and then interconnected surface waters. And we've been working with the Nature Conservancy and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife and Sustainable Conservation to help us better understand the relationship. We had some baseline assumptions in the first GSP, but now we're trying to improve that. And we want to have kind of on the ground metrics, I guess is the word I want to say, to help us make sure it's really, the connection's really there and we're really not causing an impact.
And Juliet, for the next 2 questions, if you could say them at the same time. So question number 20, question number 3, if it's okay. Yeah, thank you.
And the reason I ask is because there's a push for 30% of our lands and waters to be conserved by 2030. So in considering future land use scenarios, I really hope that we can also really ramp up the idea that we might need a lot more land for nature. So, and this is touching on like these big button controversial issues, but what I'm hearing about is the concern about private equity moving into Yolo County, especially as water is depleted in the southern part of the county, and aquifers are subsiding there, that there's a kind of more of a land grab and a rush. And is there any way to differentiate who is applying for water wells? Is there any differentiation between a more speculative interest that's a private equity driven entity versus a longtime landowner? Looking at land conversion and areas that have historically not been irrigated. And then, is anyone looking out for like who is really buying up the land in Yolo County and what those interests are? And there are speculative interests that's over onto kind of short-term, maximizing short-term gains and profits from the water use and the land use. Isn't this an equity issue for smaller landowners that are trying to have more sustainable farms over the long run? So I'm wondering how you define equity and if you're looking at this with equity lens. And on that note, also just looking at the difference between Cache Creek and Puda Creek. Puda Creek is a creek where you're actually trying to restore salmon runs and there's constant flow. And Cache Creek as well, I've heard that to increase the biodiversity, especially in the lower part of the creek, you need increased surface water flows for Cache Creek. So is there any conversation happening about that? Is there a local food system idea that there should be a local water set aside to prioritize the local food system and localizing the food system?
The last one, no, we haven't had conversations about that, the local food systems. It's very interesting. I'd love to talk to you offline about that. The State Water Board is currently proposing increased flows in Cache Creek and Poudre Creek for primarily for salmon, but also for Delta water quality objectives. I had not heard about the lower Cache Creek flow contribution, so I'd also love to follow up with you on that. And then the equity issue is something we've been trying to get our hands around with the Community Alliance with Family Farmers to see how we can better develop a program in the YCCAC that considers smaller or kind of disadvantaged farmers that should be protected. We've been trying to think about that in our well permitting review just on its own to make sure that they're not having to incur an expense that, you know, essentially a large investment corporation would be able to take on, but they couldn't. And then that first question is a really hard one, and I feel like it's above my pay grade, and maybe Supervisor Provenza would have a better answer. I don't know of an entity in the county that examines who buys property and how that may impact the community as a whole. But I'm also fairly new to this arena, so could I turn it over to you? Okay, there's that. Okay. Okay. So I mean, I think we need to just review things that come in and essentially not have a bias. But to your point, I mean, maybe there should be some consideration of whether there's going to be a detrimental impact to the community and whether someone would come in overnight and do something wrong and then just leave, you know? So that's a hard one. I don't know how to answer that, so I'm sorry.
Christine, I want to thank you so much for, you know, all the answers. And I understand that Ms. Beck and you, Mrs. Beck and you will be continuing that conversation at some point. So we really are at the end of our time on this topic. We appreciate you staying until now with us.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
And we'll follow up. I also want to mention, so there has been a request for a 5-minute break. So we are going to take a quick 5-minute break. And Carla, thank you for your patience. We'll be quick on that. And also just a notice with public comments, if we have any left, we will be listening to them, but you won't be getting an answer because we're out of time. And also that's usually the procedure. Okay. Thank you all. Quick recess.
Quickly. So my name is Carla Fresquez, and I'm the Acting Director and Engagement Program Manager at UC Davis Sustainability. And I am excited to share with you some work that we've been working on for quite some time. In particular, the UC Davis Fossil Fuel Free Pathway Plan. I'll abbreviate it, the FFFPP. It's quite a document. It's quite a collection of effort. So as far as background and context, you all are probably quite familiar with UC Davis, but just the big picture here is we have about 38,000 students, about 25,000 employees. Half are at our Sacramento campus in the medical center there. Our campus is about 5,300 acres. We are the biggest UC in the system.
Carla, before you continue, do you have the ability, are you interested in sharing your screen or not? So the commissioners can see the presentation, but members of the public, not necessarily. That's why I'm
Oh.
asking. You don't have to, I'm just checking.
I am sharing my screen right now, as far as I'm aware.
So Julia, it's not showing.
Sorry, Carla, I'm going to pause you really quick. Sorry about that.
No problem.
But if you keep talking, eventually, visually, we will catch up with you. Really,
Yeah, that sounds fine. So yeah, we are a humongous campus and we're unique. Yeah, all the UC campuses like to talk about themselves as being unique. But we are really unique in the sheer size of our campus. We have the Davis campus in particular, in terms of greenhouse gases, which is really what we're talking about today. We're talking about a plan for how we're going to be eliminating a major proportion of our greenhouse gases. Our Davis campus contributes 56% of our total greenhouse gas emissions, and then our Sacramento contributes the other 42%. So between those two campuses, it's the vast majority of our greenhouse gas contributions, which of course, as we all know, is what the major contributors to climate change. But then we also have outlying facilities, which contribute about 1.5 to 2%. Those outlying facilities include like Bodega Bay, Marine Laboratory, our Tahoe Environmental Research Center up in Tahoe, and a couple of other campuses around the state of California. I'm going to keep going. So as you know, we're a public institution, so we're responsible and beholden to many of the same regulatory contexts that are relevant to the rest of the state of California. And in addition, we also have some additional voluntary commitments. Yes, one more slide. One more slide, there you go. That's good, that's good. Yeah, and so we have an additional set of voluntary commitments. And as an institution, we have the same scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 greenhouse gas emissions that we need to account for. And that are addressed in our fossil fuel free pathway plan. So scope 1, I won't refer to this too much, but scope 1 is basically all the kinds of greenhouse gas emissions that are from a source that's owned or controlled by UC Davis. Scope 2 is the ones that are purchased, so greenhouse gas emissions that are from purchased utilities. And then scope 3 is pretty much everything else. And as a university, we have some unique scope 3 emissions, things like our air travel expenses, but also like our air travel expenses or our contributions by students who are studying abroad. There's things like waste and all sorts of other things that contribute to scope 3. But today for our fossil fuel free pathway plan, I'll be talking specifically, and it addresses specifically scope 1 and scope 2 emissions, the things that the greenhouse gas emissions that are specifically controlled by UC and the ones that are purchased from purchase utilities. So next slide. So one of the things that I also wanted to share with you all, because it's really quite relevant for citizens of California, because UC Davis is within the UC context, we are all of our UC campuses, all 10 of them, are all beholden to the University of California's Sustainable Practices Policy. And this policy really reflects a lot of things, including the fact that it was actually created in response to student advocacy. Students across the UC campuses lobbied for a sustainability policy. And so in 2003, it was applied. We're just past our 20-year anniversary. And over time, that policy has grown really significantly. So we can skip to the next slide. So it was initially just two areas: green building design and clean energy. And as our institutions have grown and as our contributions and awareness of how our campuses impact sustainability has grown, so has the policy. And so I just want to point out that last column on the far right that says years revised. And the reason why that's important and interesting is because it really, really reflects the direction that the UC system has taken in terms of understanding, acknowledging, and taking responsibility for all of the areas that we have and can be better in regards to sustainability. So this policy is revised in accordance with best practices and new knowledge in general. And that's something that makes it big and hard to do, but it's also very exciting and very valuable that we have this adaptable evolution or evolving document to influence our approaches to sustainability. All right, next slide. Okay, so what we're going to be talking today specifically is this climate action section of the policy. So in 2023, so last year, there was some major revision to the policy with regard to greenhouse gas emissions. And it reflects a lot of the changes that are happening at the state level in terms of creating very ambitious and direct decarbonization goals. So I'll go through these and then talk about them a little bit more. So the goal that the UC policy now has established for all of the campuses is that we are being asked to come up with a plan for how to achieve a 90% reduction in our total emissions of scope 1, 2, and 3 by no later than 2045 relative to a 2019 baseline year. And we're supposed to be prioritizing scope 1, all the things that are controlled or owned by our individual campuses over the purchase utilities, and then also to establish benchmark goals that we need to achieve as we march toward that 2045 goal. And then one of the biggest changes to the policy, and in contrast to previous initiatives, we're really focusing on like carbon neutrality. This goal is really reflective of direct decarbonization. We're talking about direct reduction without relying on offsets. So offsets are different strategies, mitigation strategies that can be purchased to sort of pay for the greenhouse gas emissions that you're contributing. And the goal is to not have any more purchase offsets as much as possible. And that's a really big shift for our campus and for all the campuses. All right, next slide. So previously, as I mentioned, the UC Davis Action Plan emphasized conservation and efficiency, as well as sequestration and offsets. We had that carbon neutrality goal, and now we have to move forward and cut emissions, actually electrify, and that was going to require and is requiring a major changes to our infrastructure, which has been, developed and built with the very different mindsets from the direction that we're now going. The next slide. And this is a little bit of a busy graph, but I basically just want to point out here a couple things. So if we're really going to focus on scope 1 and 2, those are the two blue parts of the graph. And what this says is basically these are our greenhouse gas emissions total of UC Davis. And previously our targets were that black line, that black dotted line up at the top. That's what we were trying to do. We were trying to get under that black dotted line. And now our goal has now evolved to be that red line at the bottom, a major reduction in total emissions, period. All right, next slide. And so this effort really has required a huge new investment of time and energy. And one of the things that we've done a little differently is we've actually been really interested in taking the responsibility of putting together a plan for how to tackle this really seriously. So next slide is we've put together a campus advisory committee on sustainability that has several charges, and that committee is really the group that put together the fossil fuel free pathway plan. And overall, they did a lot of different things, but overall, the goal has been to identify a 95% fossil fuel free pathway and move UC Davis towards direct carbon reduction. It's actually a typo there. And I'm going to skip a couple slides. Keep going. Yeah, actually go back one to that table. Just want to acknowledge, so we have been in a really good position to actually do this work internally. So the purpose of this slide here is just basically to kind of point out that we've been studying how to make our systems on campus more efficient for a really long time. And so when we took on this endeavor of putting together a plan for how to decarbonize in 2023, basically, or 2022, basically 21, 22, we were able to look back at a huge collection of work and research that had been done on investigating our, in installing and improving our power plant, looking at our energy systems, looking at a bunch of the different aspects of our utility use and infrastructure on campus to see like where the opportunities for improvement actually are. So next slide. And one of the things that was also really important to mention is that we have, and this is important to acknowledge, but there's a lot of room to improve. We have actually been doing pretty well. So the point of this graph is just to show two things. So those green bars, they're a little lighter colored. That reflects basically the energy use intensity of our campus. So our energy use intensity has actually gone down over time. This graph is from 1993 and then ends in 2021. So overall, the amount of energy we are using per, I think it's per square foot is the metric here, has gone down. And that's great, wonderful. Energy use intensity has gone down. The thing that's actually a little bit more exciting is that we've been able to do that as the total square footage of our campus has gone up significantly. So that black line is the square footage of our campus. So as we have been increasing and growing in size, adding buildings, adding more UC Davis to UC Davis, we have been able to still maintain pretty significant reductions in our energy use intensity. And that's great. But we're not looking at the trajectory of that pattern, that downward trend with those green bars. We're not going to get to low energy use intensity. We're not going to be able to significantly reduce our greenhouse gas emissions without some pretty dramatic changes in our infrastructure. All right, next slide. So we basically put together an internal team from UC Davis with some important partners. We have some representatives from the city of Davis, the Yochadahi Wintu Nation, and Yolo County, and many of the groups on campus involved in this effort to come up with a plan. And we'll skip through a few more times. So skip that one too. And so our timeline, we can go back one. So our timeline, 2022, 23, 24, basically been working on this for a while. Next slide. And we were able to actually issue the draft of our fossil fuel free pathway plan for public comment in June, and it was open for about a couple months. We received about 200 comments. It's a 150-page plan, so it's quite big. And that plan is posted publicly now, and we have been able to make that available to the public. So next slide. Oh, actually, could we go back? Sorry, that's the one. Yeah, to that double timeline. One more timeline. There we go. And so one of the things I wanted to point out, because I think this is a cool opportunity to share with you all something that's happening at all the other UCs also. So I talked about the sustainable practices policy and these changes to it. I talked about how UC Davis has been doing this fossil fuel free pathway plan. And we have, as we were in the process of kind of finalizing sort of midway through the process, the UC system decided that every single UC campus should be responsible for putting together a plan for how they are going to be decarbonizing. So this sort of a parallel process similar to what we've been doing has been going and is going on right now at all the other UCs, which is a really exciting, it's an exciting development because it means it's not just UC Davis, it's all of these, you know, it depends on who you ask and how you measure it, but the UC system is one of the biggest employers in the entire country, and definitely in the state of California. And so knowing that all of our campuses are doing this really hard work to evaluate how to get to 90 and 95% reductions in their greenhouse gas emissions is really exciting. So I just want to share with you that they're all in that process right now. And so next slide. Yeah, so this is happening at all 10 schools. And not only are they actually evaluating what it's going to take to actually decarbonize, to actually get away from fossil fuels, they're also evaluating how much this is going to cost, and then trying to align this with our mission. We are academic institutions after all. So what we're trying to do is to make sure that we're identifying opportunities for educating and building living and learning laboratory opportunities into this experience of moving away from fossil fuels and what that means for overhauling and changing at our own institutions so that our students can actually take this knowledge and information and experience out into the world as they continue this work in their future careers. All right, next slide. So the fossil fuel free pathway plan is currently published. It is available for review. You can go to this next slide. And there you go. And it does outline a plan for how UC Davis, all 6 locations, is going to eliminate 95% of our 2019 levels of fossil fuel use by 2040. So all campuses and the state are asking for a 2045 renewable energy goal, and we think that we can do it by 2040. The next slide. And I just want to go through a few sections and kind of describe how the document is laid out in case you're curious about different sections. So the table content's always useful, but what I wanted to point out is that we also have a few scope 3 elements in the appendix, and I'll talk about those in a second. But the next slide. So I mentioned those 6 UC Davis locations. There's this sort of a map outlining where they are. As you can imagine, the vast majority of greenhouse gas emissions is from our Davis and our Sacramento campuses, but the additional campuses do contribute at least 15 acres. So next slide. And so as you can imagine, because of the vast majority of greenhouse gas emissions being concentrated in these 2 locations, we're obviously focusing on them in this plan. And the 3 locations, so we have 3 plants, energy production plants on these 2 locations, and they represent over 70% of our natural gas combustion, including the Central Campus Heating and Cooling Plant, Davis, not offsite, but a smaller, non-central, non-core campus heating and cooling plant at the Primate Center, and on the Sacramento campus, a cogeneration plant that provides electricity and heating, and that actually provides extra energy and resiliency for the health campus, but also provides extra energy that feeds back into the SMUD, Sacramento Municipal Utility District grid. All right, next slide. And then I mentioned that the type of gas, fossil fuel that we actually do use is 95% natural gas, and there's a little bit of other sources of fossil fuel, including some captured biomethane for some of our products and facilities here on campus. And then next slide. So this slide basically represents our big shift. You may have heard about this. It's sort of a major infrastructure overhaul. This is probably the biggest element of the plan, and fortunately it's something we are well underway, but it's the biggest element of the plan that really contributes to moving the needle in terms of reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. It's basically a replacement of our really old and inefficient 75-year-old steam heating and cooling system. I don't know if you are more familiar with the UC Davis campus than I am, but everyone tells me that at some point there was or in general, you could walk across campus and see steam coming up out of the manhole covers around campus, and it would look a little spooky. And that was actually leaking steam from our heating system. And so this old inefficient system that was entirely reliant on natural gas is going to be replaced. And what the image to the right of this slide is sharing is that there's a big study done to evaluate at the different options available for improving the efficiency of this old leaky system. And we found multiple options, and the 2 recommended solutions were one was a lowest baseline cost or cheapest cost of $330 million, and then a full electrification option of $350 million. And that was the option the folks went with. They understood that this is the best option, is to really look into the future and make sure that we're choosing options for huge expensive infrastructure capital planning projects that do align with our overall sustainability goals. And so that where that green arrow is, we opted for a full electrification with a heat pump to allow for as much efficiency and sustainability as possible. So next slide. And the fortunate thing about this is that this one big shift infrastructure project is actually going to be, as I mentioned, it's going to be a huge contributor to our overall solutions. So the phase 1 is the Hutchison Quad. So the Memorial Union, the main quad where Shields Library is, and that area has actually already been completed, and that was completed basically during the COVID-19 pandemic. So there was fortunately less disruption to campus operations because folks weren't on campus as much. And that first phase cost $56 million. And our next phase, which is the area in purple, basically, the Life Sciences Segundo Sprocket District, that area is $55 million. And that amount has been committed for the second phase, but future phases will really depend on our ability to fund and execute these huge transitions. All right, next slide. Okay, so structure the fossil fuel free pathway plan. I talked about this a little bit. I wanted to just skip one more slide. I wanted to talk a little bit more about just kind of point out a couple things. If you're interested in engaging with this document at all, I mentioned it's 150 pages. It's quite big. It's a big, beefy document. But if you were interested in engaging with this, I would really recommend that you focus on the plan summary. It does a really good job of actually describing the solutions that are and the strategies that are identified as the optimal solution and strategy in each of the different sections. I do want to clarify that this document does not represent like our committed plan. It represents a series of solutions that allows us and shows us that it is possible to achieve these goals. We will be pursuing, we'll going through additional sort of deliberation to make sure that we do identify which specific strategies are going to get incorporated into our climate action plan, many of which are the ones that are already described in this document. But our climate action plan will not be revised until the end of 2025 or 2026, somewhere around there. So this is a huge, massive first step towards getting us to determining which particular strategies we're going to adopt. And what I wanted to point out too is there's a little box there on the far right. It's kind of covering a little bit of the cow on the bicycle, and it says response to public comment. And so the approach that we took in terms of our public engagement and comment accepting process is we wanted to make sure that we had a chance to actually directly incorporate public feedback into the document, because we wanted to make sure that that feedback and the suggestions and the critical commentary that we were receiving was acknowledged and also visible in the final plan. And so throughout the document, the plan summary and all over the place, there's these little response to public comment boxes that actually show like what our campus community and our broader community are actually thinking. And that's something I think that I really like because it makes it super transparent about, yeah, critical feedback is always good, and it's good to know what people are saying. All right, I'm gonna have us just skip right through all of these slides because they kind of just describe the different sections. Actually, go back up one, Julia. I'll just briefly mention. So we have the call to, so we have a plan summary, which is how I'd recommend to engage, a call to action, sort of like a state of the situation that we're dealing with right now. Background setting and context is sort of like how has UC Davis already addressed some of these issues? And then the district energy and standalone solutions are the meat and potatoes of this document. So they're really the ones that talk about the big shift and the other really high impact solutions that have been identified. And then we talk about fleet and equipment, how we'll be transitioning, or the process and decisions that will go into transitioning our fleet and equipment. And then energy infrastructure and sourcing. And then finally, space and capital planning. Like how do we make sure that we're managing our space in a way that contributes to these goals? All right. And then the last thing I wanted to acknowledge, because it was actually the part of the document that got the most feedback, and I can imagine it's not surprising why, is the appendices, so our scope 3 strategies. And for us in this document, we were asked to talk about scope 1 and scope 2 strategies, but because scope 3 strategies are the kinds of things that have the most direct impact on all of our lives, we want to make sure we were at least acknowledging and discussing what solutions have been identified for those particular strategies. So the first one was commuting suggestions. I don't know if you all are aware, but there are quite a lot of commuters that come to UC Davis every day. I'm one of them, unfortunately. I live in Sacramento and commute to UC Davis, and I experience it whenever I'm not working from home. I do have a hybrid schedule, but we had by far the most engagement with this section. And there was a variety of suggestions, fortunately, some that have already been implemented since they were made in the paper and documented in the plan, including things like transit subsidies, funding EV charger installation, putting together more vehicle trip reduction efforts, including remote work, which has actually made quite a big impact on both, particularly the Davis campus. The health campus has not quite been able to adopt as much remote work. Proximate commuting, so actually allowing folks that live in Sacramento to work on the campus most close to their homes. And just in general, providing more on-campus housing for UC Davis staff. So really outlining like a variety of different solutions that could really contribute to reductions in our scope 3 emissions. All right, our next slide. And so the other area of scope 3 is air travel suggestions. So it has been quite a big challenge to quantify the air travel impact that our business operations and our study abroad and educational operations have. Like, what are the greenhouse gas emissions associated with these areas of air travel? And so this is actually something that's really exciting, that the UC system as a system is they're doing a much better job and actually really focusing on accurately quantifying this, because it has been quite hard to capture all of that. As you can imagine, these air travel and travel in particular, especially for business, or is done in different ways. Like, those are not necessarily all tracked through our internal systems. And we think we do have an internal air travel monitoring system that's able to collect some data about who's going where, how many miles traveled, things like that. But we probably have only about 50% adoption at most of the UCs for using that internal system. And otherwise, people are buying their tickets online and traveling on their own dime and that kind of thing. So we have a lot of work to do, but this is one of the areas that the system right now is really focusing on, because it's quite an area rich and ripe for improvement. All right, next slide. So overall, I just wanted to point out a couple of things. Actually, let me skip one more slide. So overall, I want to point out a couple of things. So these last two images are pulled straight from the fossil fuel free pathway plan. And what I want to point out here is that we have really positive, and we're really positive about and optimistic about our opportunity right now to achieve a lot of these benchmark goals and actually achieve this process and these goals. And that's really because we have such an opportunity to make a huge dent in our greenhouse gas emissions with the big shift. So our internal benchmarks right now that are potential benchmarks, and we're thinking about how to like get this turn from potential to a commitment, is actually achieving about a 75% reduction by 2030, and an 81% reduction by 2035, and that 95% reduction by 2040. And by far, the two conversions that are going to impact this the most is, like I mentioned, the Davis campus big shift, and also addressing the Sacramento campus's cogeneration conversion. And yeah, so we have a lot of work to do, but it's looking pretty good. And yeah, I think that's kind of my last slide. Oh, actually, one last slide I can summarize. I just kind of mentioned this. It's the big shift is going to get us there, or a lot of the way there. It's going to cost about approximately $1 billion in today's dollars. So obviously, our biggest challenge right now is the financial barriers to implementation. But we're really exploring all possible options. It amounts to about $58 million in today's dollars for the next 17 years. And fortunately, we've already had some early wins, early successes with implementation, and then associated cost savings. It was really nice. I was able to speak to the utility manager, and he was able to tell me that after completion of the first phase of the big shift, we were actually seeing so much more efficiency and so much additional cost savings because of how inefficient the system had been and how old and leaky it was, basically, that we're projecting that we're going to recuperate quite a bit of operational savings because of the investment in this more efficient system. So that's some of the early successes that we're seeing with implementation. And then the other thing that just as an acknowledgement is because this work was done internally, we did not hire an external consultant to consult on this and to work on this, to support on this, is that we actually have the people who are that are doing the work and making the decisions on a daily basis, actually able to do the early implementation. So instead of waiting for some massive sort of mandate, we're actually able to like make these small changes regularly, and that's another kind of exciting win, that we're able to use our own staff to do something, and then have it implement right away. All right, I think that is my last slide, and I'd be happy to take any questions and do my best.
Carla, I can't thank you enough. Could you please give a round of applause to Director Vasquez? I want to thank you first for your patience, because we run a bit longer than anticipated. Sometimes this commission get very passionate about the topics that we discussed, so that happened again tonight. And then before we share our questions with you, I want to acknowledge that it is 6:38, so one commissioner had to leave. We still have a quorum, so I need the permission of my fellow commissioners. Is it okay if we wrap up the meeting? Can you like spare, I don't know, like 15, 20 additional minutes? If you have to leave, understand. The moment we don't have a quorum, I'll have to stop the meeting.
One person leaves, we no longer have quorum then.
We have one commissioner online, Commissioner Austin.
I'm still here. I gave a little thumbs up. I can continue on.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you, Bernadette. So, and then Supervisor Provenza also had to leave, just to acknowledge it. Thank you so much, Supervisor Provenza. Okay, so let's power through. Commissioner Ullman.
Till 7.
Oh, you are very generous. Thank you, thank you. Okay, we'll try to end as early as we can.
I only have about 10 more minutes.
Okay, so let's be good, right? We can do this. I will go first for once. I only have 2 quick questions for you, Carla. I was wondering, so the reason we asked for this presentation is because the last time we had one was over a year ago, I think almost 2 years ago. The reason I asked for it was because UC Davis is one of our partners in, the creation of the draft of the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan, but also you are central to what is happening in Yolo County and in the region in general, the biggest employers, and and when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions, you also take the cake. So the 2 quick questions, I was wondering if, briefly you can give us a little bit of an idea when it comes to big picture. So there is Yolo County, there is UC Davis. What would you say is the impact, rough estimation of the impact of the university in the county when it comes to greenhouse gas emission, if I may ask you? And then the second question, so you can just, answer it all. Since you have done this amazing, extensive work already in reducing, first in creating a plan, having an assessment, then reducing the GHG emissions on campus, have you identified the number one measure that has yielded the most dramatic results?
Yeah, 2 great questions. So that I will tell you right now, I do not know the answer to your first question at all, and I really should. So what percent of greenhouse gas emissions does our campus contribute in terms of relative to Yolo County? I'm going to look that up, and hopefully I'll be able to share that information in the future.
Thank you.
What the biggest sort of current impact? Let's see, my connection is unstable.
Yes. In terms of reducing your GHG, what is the biggest initiative or measure that has yielded, the biggest results to date?
So the most energy intensive aspect of any sort of campus is the heating and cooling of buildings, period, the end. And that is basically the process of converting our steam heating system from steam to a hot water conversion has actually been a process that's allowed us to do direct decarbonization and remove all of the gas. There's not a lot of them, but the buildings that are on gas power. That process, it's basically the big shift. The big shift is the one thing that is going to get us probably around independently for the Davis, just for the Davis campus, it's going to get us about 83% of the way towards our to full decarbonization. And that's just one infrastructure overhaul. There are additional other elements, but that one project, expensive and difficult as it will be, because it does actually represent a full tearing up of every single street and every single pipe in all over the UC campus, because we have a very distributed system. That's going to be the thing that's going to get us about 83% of the way towards decarbonizing our entire campus.
Thank you. Appreciate your answer. And then also, before opening the floor, if, is it okay? Are you open to also receiving questions by email? And
yes.
Okay, I appreciate
Absolutely.
that. Do we have commissioners with burning questions either online or on the floor? Commissioner Britton.
Mine is not a question. It's a comment. What you just showed us and the document that I read when it was out to public comments is one of the things that makes me the proudest to have been and still be a professor of UC Davis. You guys have really rocked that plan. It is readable, it is thorough, it has got amazing graphics. It is a model of what these plans should look like. So good job.
I appreciate that a lot. It was wonderful to have a big group. It was hard, but it was wonderful to have a big group of staff and faculty. I didn't mention faculty, but faculty also involved in the process. Homegrown, which is a nice way to put it.
Thank you, Carla. Commissioner Ullman.
You mentioned that you have numerous electricity sources, and I want to ask you to name them. Are they in the plan? Can I find them in there?
Yeah, you can find them in the plan. We have, and I think it breaks down what proportion of our electricity, because we have the different campuses, it's going to be numerous. We have 6 campuses across the UC campus, but I believe they're identified in the plan. Yeah.
Good.
Thank you. And I have to say, one of my favorite slides was the one about the research that is currently ongoing, that you've had in the past, and that relates to the climate adaptation plan. Additional questions? Maybe online? Julia?
Nothing online at this time.
Okay, public. Commissioner Britton.
Yeah,
Yes.
one small question. You mentioned that getting more chargers on campus, EV chargers, was happening. I haven't seen that actually happening in the garages that I've went. Where are they?
I will acknowledge that it's just one of the solutions that's been identified as a potential solution for moving away from greenhouse gas, or helping people to transition away from fossil fuel vehicles. There's a lot of discussion. About what direction our campus should go in terms of providing chargers, and it's still very much in the works. And part of that is in collaboration with some Yolo County folks on the zero emission vehicle plans. But if you want to know, I could direct you in the right place about where they are going in and where and where they need to be, and you can share your thoughts with Ramon, and I can pass that your info along. If anybody would like to follow up with me, the best way to reach me, you can email me directly, or you can email sustainability@ucdavis.edu, and that's just easy to remember, and it'll come to me.
Thank you. I'm sure you'll be getting follow-up questions and comments. Public comment?
Yeah, we do have one online. Christine, you have the floor.
Yes, so my name is Christine Kimball Shoemaker, and I also am very proud as a former undergraduate at UC Davis of seeing this plan, and happy to say that I was a graduate from there long time ago. One thing I want to say, I'm very happy that you're publicly saying that offsets are not going to be an integral part. It's not that storing carbon isn't a good thing to do, but we have seen them, so to speak, go up in smoke. So I think it's really a good thing that UC Davis has called that out and saying we're going to actual direct reductions. And this is a kind of a sidelight. I do like your logo or whatever it is on the bottom right of Bossy Cow Cow on the bike. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Okay, so this concludes our time on this agenda item. Carla, we would like to really thank you again. We're very proud to be partnering with UC Davis and the Sustainability Department on, the creation of the county's draft. So this concludes our time on agenda item number 7. I want to do something. So we have the review of the draft cap, and then we have the tax, but Commissioner Serena has to leave
In about 5 minutes.
in about 5 minutes. So Julia and Carla, again, thank you. I know you're still here.
Do you like to move the order of the items, or do you want me to just go through quickly?
Yes. So I'm suggesting that we listen to the tax updates right now, and that we start with the equity and engagement. Yes? Okay, let's do it. Agenda item number 9.
Yeah, so we met about mainly the outreach and also the workshop and what roles we're going to be playing, and also the guide for anybody participating, and some of the content of the workshops. And everything's moving pretty fast. And also things are, one of the comments I have, and I'm just saying it here in the public so that it can be noted, is that there's been a fail, I would say, with our consultants in the translation of lots of the content for these workshops. And I'm not pleased about that, because it's something that they should have taken care of. It's really important to the equity component of our outreach and also of the workshops themselves, is that these are accessible in different languages. And I know that our staff here is working on it. So I know that, and I thank you for that. But I do feel like it's now becoming a burden for staff to attempt to look for, other sources to translate this really intensive document, as well as some of our outreach materials. And so I just wanted to say that that's something that I'm not happy about, because it is, again, affecting some of our outreach and equity goals. So something that falls on the consultants. And so I know that one of our community partners is being leaned on heavily to translate. And all I'm saying is that it is work. At the end of the day, translating is work. And so it's work that we paid the consultants to do. And I don't feel that they have met their contract requirements.
Yes.
So I'm thinking, what is the accountability there? And it shouldn't be us giving them more money. So that's something I brought up there at our last meeting, and I wanted just to kind of note it here. And also, yeah, this is a very important part of our outreach and the equity, and really trying to make this accessible to all communities in our county. So other than that, we did touch on, the outreach, of course, and that is an important point of it, is making sure we're able to provide content in different languages. So that is about it, I believe. So again, there's a heavy focus on these workshops that are coming up. I know that there was maybe an obstacle in Esparto. I don't know if we've been able to secure a space there, but that was something that we were trying to secure when we met. And that's about it, I think. Is there anything else I left out, please, Chairman? Okay, thank you.
I do have a quick follow-up request for you, Adelita. A favor that I'm asking you, would you, please draft an email about the comment you just shared?
Sure.
And regarding the money that was paid and the fact that, consultant did not fulfill that part of the contract, and email it to the supervisor for the next
Sure.
meeting as a public comment.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. So you have it on record. Yes, Julia.
Yeah, we did, just to respond, Adelita, we did confirm in Esparto, so we are good
Oh,
there.
good.
It will be RISE, so
Yay.
working on that. And then if anyone has any comments or questions about what Adelita was just commenting on, feel free to follow up with me offline.
Thank you, Julia.
Thank you.
We have 8 minutes left. Suggest that we listen to the Working Lands Advisory Committee. Do we have a representative?
Heather is online. I can go
Okay.
ahead.
Hi, Heather. Thank you for joining us.
Hi,
Hello,
Heather.
and thanks. I'll try to keep it really brief. It's been a really interesting meeting. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So since last we reported, our efforts with the Natural Working Lands Technical Advisory Committee have been focused on reviewing draft documents from the consulting firm, the ones that are related to natural working lands, of course, RCD staff, and needed to provide extensive feedback. I'll say that on the appendix summary, which is what we had access to, and the associated tables. Most of that information we provided, and there was a lot of responsive and insightful feedback from a number of commission members who are serving on this committee, including Sarah Morgan, Micah Bennett, Playa Alvarez. They put in a lot of time. Denise Segura gave us feedback from the Farm Bureau, specific, to all the draft work. And we also reached out to the nonprofit Carbon Cycle Institute, which they reviewed and also provided extensive feedback. And the primary feedback really was ensuring that the sections and the language was localized. And there was a lot of things that needed to be localized to Yolo County. For example, we don't really have forest lands, we have woodlands. And we had our farm and ranch community spend quite a bit of time, step by step going over the different crop types, ground truthing, the acreage reporting, some of that needed to be adjusted. And then also climate ag practices that are appropriate to crop types, and really back to offsets. This is also, voluntary, incentivized based section of the CAP, and realizing that a lot of what we're talking about carbon sequestration is in that offset category. So I was interested to hear how UC Davis was handling that. So we have pretty tight timeline to do all of our editing. We went back and forth quite a bit with DUDEC and the team that Kristen leads at the county. We will be looking for the public version as soon as it's out. I think it's still on track for the 7th, so that we can review that again, ensure the input from the TAC is incorporated responsively, and plan to meet with RCD edits and other really engaged TAC members who might also like to be kind of fine-combing through that, just to make sure, and getting of our additional comments and edits and suggestions. So that's really just the update. We've been in that review mode. We submitted it May 8th. Of course, Kristen she was working up until maternity leave. She's been amazing to work with, I just want to say. And before she left, she probably let you know, but I'm going to just make sure that the commission knows. She also led her team led a concept proposal to the EPA to really put the plan into action when it becomes approved by the commission. We'll find out, if it's awarded, but it's a multi-million-dollar project. It's for multiple counties, and it would you know, if we do get funded, which we were brought back for a full proposal, so it's possible, to be able to have our own localized, site-specific, one-stop shop information hub and funding applications for incentivizing on-farm practices, land-based sequestration efforts. So it's really kudos to her team and to Kristen for taking it all the way to another step, so we can see maybe what the next, you know, post planning could look like with the community. So that's really, I could go on. I want to just keep it short, but let you know a lot has happened in the last month.
Okay, thank you very much for this report, and I'm so sorry that we have to be short on time tonight, but it sounds like a lot of ground was covered.
Definitely.
Much ground, I mean. Okay, so do we have any public comments? I see your hand raised. Yes.
I'm just wondering, we just heard that the TAC, Natural Working Lands TAC, the amount of work that needed to go into reviewing the documents to localize them to Yolo County. And since this is a plan that's really supposed to be driving equity in the county, I'm wondering if the equity engagement TAC or a body, a subset of this body, it's going to put a similar eyes and, you know, analysis and framework on the CAP recommendations through the lens of, are these driving equity? Is there going to be an equity impact assessment of the climate solutions that are recommended? Health equity impact assessment, something that drives, so that we can really analyze whether or not this plan is driving equity in this whole process. So I'm just wondering, that amount of resources seems like it's needed. I don't want to add work to the equity engagement tax, since it seems like they've already been overworked just dealing with outreach and getting documents translated. So I'm not saying that they should be overburdened with this responsibility, and I'm wondering, is that process going to take place here?
So to respond to that, the equity and engagement TAC, they did provide, we worked with them for at least 3 or 4 meetings back and forth to get the community engagement strategy, the CEP portion of the CAP, and the equity portion of the CAP incorporated. So that was back in June of 2023, and that piece is being incorporated into the CAP. I can't answer, I don't know, but I can follow up with you. If there is a specific separate equity assessment, the equity is incorporated into all of the actions, but there isn't a separate assessment, but I can double check with our consultants and follow up with you offline if that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Online, do we have any comments? It's 7 p.m.
No, sorry, we do not.
Okay, thank you. I'm closing our time on agenda item number 9. For the 8, do you absolutely want us to go over it, or can we table that for
I think I can,
quickly?
I can quickly walk through it. It's not, I think actually just to pause really quick, I should have done this in our announcements, but I just want to introduce Amy Nguyen. She's from the planning department, and I'll let her introduce herself as well, but she's going to be helping out on our team between now and August. And yeah, I can let you introduce yourself if you'd like.
Good evening, commissioners. I should have introduced myself earlier. My name is Amy Nguyen. I am housed in the planning division at Community Service Department, and I will be serving as the cross-divisional planner between the planning division and the sustainability. So just being that liaison between the two teams, and so happy to introduce myself to you all.
Amy Wong, thank you for joining us. I'm repeating a little bit just what you said. So you are in the planning division and also the liaison and, you know, part-time basically with the sustainability division. Thank you again. Okay. Yes, Julia.
So yeah, going back to the draft cap workshop materials. So those pretty brief, those are flyers that were sent in the commission packet. We only have the English one included right now, but this will also be translated in Spanish and Russian. If you have any feedback you'd like to share, the flyer and outreach materials were already reviewed by the E&E TAC. Would love more feedback if you guys have any. However, would need that feedback by June 5th, at least, before we are sending out the press release and announcement of the workshops. Secondly, we have attached in here as I believe, in the package of attachment J, the public comment portal that we're going to be using. It'll be Microsoft Forms. I request the same. And this was based off of best practices from other jurisdictions, and we had consulted on what would be the best option on how to solicit feedback from the public. And so similarly, if you guys have feedback, please feel free to email sustainability@yolocounty.org or me directly, and we can incorporate that. The last thing, and sorry, I'm going through these so quickly. The last thing is the workshop flow. Just quickly, the workshops are going to be, just so you all know, kind of the feedback that we're looking for and how we're tailoring the workshops. We are having it a little bit broader, just so that people aren't so overwhelmed with all of these actions, since we want public comment on the full plan, but not in a way that feels like too much. We had combined the strategies, and so we're looking for feedback on the strategy and measure level. And so we have the workshops, which I will also, if folks, I'll jump to this afterwards, but if folks are able to volunteer after we send out a volunteer sign-up sheet, we will do a volunteer training and walk through all of the different, we'll have boards similarly to the last workshop where we have tables set up and the different 4 different boards, and people can go around and provide comment directly. We'll have note takers as well. And yeah, so it'll be a similar flow to the last workshop series, just a little bit broader feedback. And then also just to share with you all that we have confirmed our workshop schedule. And so we will have one in Knights Landing on June 19th. That will be in English and Spanish. We will also be having one in Esparto. That's going to be Spanish only, and that will be at Rise Inc. And the last in-person workshop will be in Esparto, and it will be English and Spanish. That will also be Rise Inc. The Knights Landing one, that first one, is going to be at the Knights Landing Community Center. We'll also be offering 3 virtual workshops. Those are going to be the 22nd, the 27th, and the 28th of June. And those are, all the details on that are provided on the flyers. They will also be included in the press release along with the draft cap and the announcement of the public comment portal. And lastly, we will be providing the volunteer sign-up sheet. So I know we just quickly went over what our confirmed schedule is going to be for the workshop. So we're going to go ahead and follow up with a volunteer sign-up sheet for anyone who's interested or available to come help out. After that, we'll assign roles and follow up, and then send out volunteer trainings in a similar fashion that we did for the last workshop series.
So clarifying question, when you say volunteers, is that open to anyone in Yolo County, or are you targeting specific people or inviting specific groups to volunteer?
We will be sending out the volunteer sign-up sheet to like our CBOs and other partners and groups that have been requesting updates. Last workshop series, we had it open to whoever was available. I know there were folks from Cool Davis who were great and helped out. We're gonna have everyone in volunteer trainings. We'll have one for the in-person workshops and then one for the virtual workshops. So all hands on deck, really. And we appreciate anyone's time who's interested and available to come help out.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I am mandated to ask if we have any public comments before I can close on this item and release everyone. So do we have any public comments?
No public comment at this time.
Okay. Commissioners, I'm not being rude to you. Burning reactions beside I'm hungry and I'm ready to go home. None. Okay, so this closes our time on agenda item number 8. Reports, future agenda items. Nope. See you next month. Commissioner Britton, yes?
One real fast one. We had a very successful set of bicycle promotion activities in Winters
Wow.
in the last couple of weeks. It's been a focus of our Winters Climate Action Commission. You can do it for free. We had help from the police department
Wow.
and it was great. It was great.
Fantastic. Congratulations. Any additional news? Anyone getting married? Okay. This concludes our time on agenda item number 9. It is 7:07 and this meeting is officially adjourned. I thank you all for staying a bit longer. Have a good week. Well done.